Well, happy Monday, if that's what you can call it, this July 10th, 2023. It came way too quickly. The weekend went by super fast. Listen, my own personal gripe within the first couple minutes of the show. Whoever it is that gained access to the studios here over the weekend did nobody here any favors. One, we're missing something special from the television behind me. If you're on the Rumble, you can see there's nothing up on the screen. Typically, it's a revolving number of images of like 710K in US, or maybe, hey, we're the best radio show in Denver, according to the good folks at Westward, or maybe it's a picture of Stefan and Leroy and what can only be described as We're in Prison, the movie poster. But the USB drive that's attached to that is missing, and I think part of the show will be trying to track down who it is that stole that. But more than that, when I come in, typically when I get an opportunity to log into the computer, I am visited by a background on the computer itself that is also Stefan and Leroy. And it's a subtle reminder. It's not really that subtle. It's a reminder of a couple things. One, I've just never made a decision that poor, and it makes me feel better about me. And the other one is...
Or at least not taking pictures of it.
Well, yes, of course. Yes, that's true. Yeah. And Billy, I can't tell you how many times at this stage of my life I've thought to myself, God was looking out for me by putting me in an era where nobody's taking selfies with Polaroids. You know what I mean? Like the things that we did in college were memories only. Like there's no footage of me up on top of anything or anyone.
Just memories and scars. That's all it is.
Just memory scars. And you can dispute the words. Like people could say, that was when you put your finger in the, and I'm like, nope, that wasn't me and that was not a finger. But whatever it was, no proof at all. And now they do. So that's gone. I didn't get a chance to log in today because whatever clown shows ran this studio in our absence, Billy, have left me somewhat incapable of doing things like logging onto stuff where you count on the passwords being in there already.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So
they're not there anymore.
Yeah, so they're not there anymore.
I don't know where the thumb drive went that goes to the back of the TV. How did it disappear?
Who takes a thumb drive?
Yeah, we almost should do like a true crime episode. And
look, if we were the Pentagon, I get it.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
But you know, now that I meant, there's an actual camera in here that uncomfortably Mark pointed out. I don't think I realized there was one there. I would be definitely far less active on these screens if I knew there was a camera pointed at them. But we're not going to find out who it is from the camera. I feel like we're the White House with the cocaine.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, how in the world can you have a building that houses some of the most sensitive information and yet at the same time highest profile, most important people, like the president? The vice president comes over from the EOB from time to time, and cocaine gets left there, and someone's like, well, I don't know that we're ever going to figure this out. I'm like, wait, what? This isn't like Who Broke Wind, you know what I mean, in the West Wing. This is something a little more ridiculous. Like someone brought a controlled substance into the most secure building, or one of them in the world, and left it there, and we're all like, well-trafficked area.
There's like part of me that is like, that again, the cynical part of me is, I'm pretty sure that isn't the first time someone has brought cocaine into the White House. I'm just saying that they got a long history.
Under this president, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. I think there are a couple of people that over history that we go, yes, no, yes, absolutely, and probably some other stuff. Yeah. So.
But it also it gives different meaning to trafficked. You know, when you have well-trafficked area, you're like, wait, do you mean people or drugs? Because that is clearly what's going on there.
Yeah, and I love the part, we were talking about it off air, and it reminded me of the Gallagher bit where he was trying to get through airport security, and he went through the metal detector, and he did just fine, and they pulled him across and wanted to search him again. He's like, no, you can't search me. I didn't go ding. He's like, no, sir, we're going to have to. He goes, no, you're searching for dingables.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the idea, is that, what the security at the White House, I thought it would be a little tighter than just trying to look for dingables. I thought that maybe we'd be looking
dingalings.
For... Yeah, exactly. Well, I don't know.
Listen, big happy birthday shout out to a couple folks you may have heard of before. Jessica Simpson. Take a guess. How old?
Wow.
Jessica Simpson.
Ooh. Mid-40s, maybe?
Oh, you're very close. 43.
There we go. Okay.
How about Sofia Vergara?
Oh, she's into the 5-decade club, I believe.
She's 51, and she, very, very well preserved. I don't know how else to say without offending someone, but like the picture of Stefan and Leroy, seeing these two and it's their birthdays reminds me I am undeniably straight. There is something going on that would suggest any gray area. There.
And
you know what I mean?
I feel bad for Jessica because of the popularity of the reality show at the time, and it was on that early, time of the high tide for reality shows with she and Nick Lachey. And unfortunately, some of the stuff that came out of her mouth did not portray her as the brightest bulb. And I think that became harder for her later on, as far as her career. I think it became very, very difficult to be taken seriously in doing anything after some of the stuff that happened.
I want to feel worse about it, and I'm sure there's a lot of stereotypes / misogyny, floating around in there. But when you have banked on, in part, how physically attractive you are, and you've allowed yourself to be portrayed a certain way, I mean, there's a risk, right? I mean, it doesn't make it right, but it does make it reality, and that is people just start to draw whatever conclusions they can, and nobody threw her on, Match Game or anything to disabuse folks of their... Here's my Jeopardy partner, Jessica Simpson.
Yes,
you know what I mean? Like,
very true.
I don't know. And she's just yelling out answers like it's Wheel of Fortune. You know what I mean?
She's like, Alex, I want to buy an E. Wrong game. It's like, okay. And now, and they're like, Daily Double comes up and she's like, no whammies, no whammies. That's still not the right game, Jessica. Not the right game.
And now we've just fed into that same
Yes, we have.
Sorry, Jessica. Happy birthday, wherever you are. Billy, update on the weekend for Household Thorpe.
Yeah, it was a busy weekend.
Really?
Had lots of radio stuff to do. We did some stuff outside. And washed the cars yesterday, which was funny because I did the hand wash. I washed the new one, and I washed my son's car, my oldest son's car. His, is newer, and he hadn't washed it recently. And then later in the day,
when you're washing the new car, are you doing it like you're petting a new pony or something, like you're brushing the new pony, like, oh, who's my sweet girl?
It sure
you know what I
feels
mean?
That way. Yes, there's times you're like, the thing that gets me is the ridiculous amount of brake dust that gets inside of the tires and the wheels. So getting down there is really that's an act of love, because that is not easy to do. And so you're down there scraping that stuff out of there, going, you're gonna get out, and I love you so much. But yeah.
I'm growing a mustache under my long nose.
Exactly, under my long nose. So it was interesting later on. One of my oldest daughter said, "Oh, you washed Max's car and you washed Mom's car and didn't wash my car." And then I looked at her and I'm like, "Yeah." And I go, "Darling, I've seen the inside of your car." And I've seen the attention to cleanliness. I didn't think you'd notice.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and it also started to get hot. But there's something for me that's very cathartic about hand washing the cars. Like I know that you're an automatic guy, and I don't do
except
a
for
lot
the
of
vacuuming.
Oh, the vacuum is fantastic.
Which sucks.
That is the big. That is
no
the big
pun
plus.
intended.
Yeah, that is a big plus. But I'll just bring out the shop vac and I'll do that. I'll pull the car mats out early and you wash those and you vacuum off and you vacuum them.
And wait, where are you washing the car mats? Like, what are you using? Do you have a pressure washer?
Oh no, I just you pull them out. I have got 2 different nozzles that go on the end of the garden hose. Oh, yeah. One of them has the multi nozzle where you can change. It has all sorts of different sprays. Sure. The other one takes paint off of things, and so it's just a little tiny brass nozzle. That, oh my gosh, this creates
some
so
of
much
these
pressure.
things look like they could sever a limb. Like when I've been squirting and stuff, like I'll inadvertently hit a post on the deck, and it takes the paint right off, and you're like, oh, my goodness.
Like, whoops. Yeah, it was best $3 I ever spent, because I did not realize how much pressure was going to come out of this thing. So it really focuses the water. So, go through and you vacuum them first, then, wash those and let them sit in the sun while you wash the rest of the car. But there's something very, very cathartic about going through and doing it, and there's a procedure that I've, over the years, that I've done, although I was a little embarrassed. I had to get the step stool.
What?
I can't reach the top of the new car. I'm short.
Hold on, the car that you just showed me on Friday?
Yes, I can't reach the roof. So I had to get the step stool, and I'm up there. So, I felt like a little munchkin up there. It was really funny.
Folks, it's also a sweet ride, man. That's in great condition.
Oh, thank you. It was really nice. And I'm a 2-bucket washer. That's important. Got to use the 2 buckets. Just do 1 bucket. That's bad form. You don't know what you're doing. So the 2 buckets is you have 1 bucket that is filled with the soapy water. The second bucket is filled with clean water.
Oh, clean water.
No, because the idea is once you soap up the car, you come back and you don't put the dirty the dirty hand. I have a hand thing. Yeah, sure. I don't put that back into the clean soap. You got to put that into the the water. And so
are you going
rinse it.
Miyagi on this thing, like wax on, wax off? Or?
I did not wax either of the cars yesterday, but I will go and get wax for the next time. But I don't apply. I don't do the traditional wax where you have to rub it on.
Yeah.
There is a product out there that Meguiar's has that is a spray-on ceramic wax that is fantastic for low effort. It is really, really
I'm all about
good.
Low effort.
Yeah. And so I've tested a couple of the products, and this one, it's not the greatest thing out there, but given effort, time, and what the end product is, it is spot on fantastic. Now, it's kind of expensive. It's about $20 a bottle. So
What?
you got to be kind of...
It's like hair care products.
Yeah, it is. You got to be kind of judicious with how you apply it. But if you do it right, it gives you a phenomenal shine, and the best thing in the world is when that water hits next time, you get the beads all over the place, and that makes my nipples hard when that happens. That is where you know you've done it right.
That's a visual where, buddy, I just got a little bit of the coffee back up over my glottis there.
Yeah,
That
exactly.
One.
Thanks.
Woo!
So I was doing that, and then I did.
For less than $20 a bottle, though, you can do the same thing, well, or at least the same outcome with Boone's Farm Delicious Apple,
Yes, you
because
can.
by the time you finish that bottle, you don't care about the car
you
anymore.
don't care at all. Yeah.
So you're done.
Yeah, now I know. I also did. I was working on some touch-up paint for my car that I'm then going to move on to my wife's car, but I need to perfect the technique.
Oh,
so
I
was
got
working on that yesterday. So I actually went and I bought, because her car and mine are the same color, same exact Mercedes-Benz color. So I went and I bought. This is
This
7,
is
8 months
the
ago.
Mercedes 350.
Yeah, ML. Yeah, the
ML.
Yep, which is the SUV model. But it's both the Mercedes 040 Black, which is their classic black they've had more than 60 years. So spent the money, and I got sandable primer and the Mercedes-Benz color, and then also clear coat. So I'm going to apply the third coat of paint later this morning, and I'll clear coat a little bit of it this afternoon, and then we'll see how it turns out. So far, the technique, and I started on my car rather than hers, because if I started on hers and I messed it up, that's all I'm going to hear about. And I'd probably deserve that. So started on mine in a little spot that's not too noticeable, but I got to get the technique right. And the bottles come with brushes on the inside, and they lie. Do not use those brushes. They suck. And so you got to go out and get your own paint brushes, or the real pro tip, toothpicks. Toothpicks are fantastic for adding touch-up paint into paint chips.
I haven't done that. What I
Fantastic.
do need, though, is probably some guidance on the whole using the rubbing compound thing to try to, let's say somebody that looks a lot like me that has my car tried to back into the garage once, and normally I'm a wizard at it.
Oh, yeah.
But when you get a little too close to the side panel, of
Yes,
the garage,
yeah.
there's something called paint transfer that takes
Yes, there
place
is.
on the rear quarter panel of the passenger side. I have streaks, and I'm just at first it was just a source
Maybe
of
after the
great
show,
rage.
let's go back out and I'll take a look, and we'll see how bad it is and what you'd have
I don't
to do
think
for
like
it.
it's not deep. It's not like it's cut into the whatever
See,
that's.
there are a couple of theirs. It depends on what stage you're in, because there's something that's really simple out there, and then there are two other things that are a little more difficult. So we can take a look at it. In fact, my wife had that story in one of our vans,
And?
she was backing into the garage, and I always remember this. She's backing in, and she starts to hear a strange noise. She's like, "That's weird."
sounds
And
like
she
a
keeps
child
going.
under a wheel.
She keeps going. It's like a skrrr, and she keeps going. So
Oh,
there's a
no,
long
no,
line
no,
down one of the
no,
vans.
no.
Yeah, not yeah. So it was really funny. She goes, "Yes." She goes, "Normally you'd think I would stop." Just
No.
didn't that day. Just
No.
figured that's a strange sound.
Anytime I feel contact, man, it's an instant stop, and the head's on a swivel because I'm picturing one of the neighbor kids or something
Exactly.
like that.
Yeah.
Like, and then I turn out it's just the car, and you get really upset.
Now, you do automatic washing. You go to the automatic garage.
Yeah,
not,
of
you
course.
don't- not
of
the
course.
ones-
I just
yeah.
don't listen. I'm happy to get out of the car and do the vacuuming and all the armor, all and stuff on the interior or whatever. But on the outside thing, I'm kind of content. And I have the same ritual, and I've started it with all the boys. Now, two of them don't really ride with me as much. That's Jeffy and Trey, but Graham does. And as soon as we start to get into the actual drive-through washer thing, I fire up car wash on the phone. And so the whole time we're going through,
This is car wash.
it
That's
is
funny.
car wash, It's just
that's
a thing
great.
we do. And we're just jamming out into, from the 70s, you know what
That's
I mean?
great.
Yeah. So
Now here's a tip though. Go to the car washes that don't use the big brushes that spin.
Don't use
Go
the
to the
big
ones
one?
that only use the water. Don't go to the ones that have the big
brush is
brushes.
bad.
Yeah, and here's why. How often do you think they clean those brushes?
I think they're self-cleaning because they're cleaning all the time.
No, and that's the problem, is all of the grit and grime that they're taking off of those cars stays in those brushes. They don't wash them, or if they do, very infrequently. So all of the grime that is built up from all the cars in front of you turns around, and as it's slapping there, it slaps onto your paint. That's why you get those swirls. those little tiny micro streaks inside your paint, it's because of those stupid brushes.
No, this
so
sounds like
what
the
you
next...
need to do is you got to do the touchless thing. If you can find a good touchless near you, that's worth its weight in gold. But yeah, the brush ones don't even bother.
I've been in those kinds of relationships before too. It sounds like the next.
I had those in my teenage years.
It sounds like you're going to say something next, like, "Oh, and by the way, don't share a toothbrush for the same reasons," which is crack smoke crazy. The other part of the weekend, by the way, for us,
what'd you do?
Was the state baseball tournament.
How did that
for
go?
The championship? Oh, buddy, so. They break up. It's such a big tournament. I mean, there's a ton of teams that they divide them between Boulder and Louisville. And then on Friday, the rain was so ridiculous, it shut down the Friday games.
No.
So it's supposed to be Friday. So out of the two squads, one group that played in Louisville got to play 2 additional games, and we got hosed out of it, which sucked. But then the next day, we won both of our games, and then we went into bracket play, and they ended up having the 2 brackets, the teams that got to play on Friday and the teams that didn't. And we were the 3 seed going into yesterday.
3, that's good.
That was good. And it also means that we didn't have to play at like 8 in the freaking morning, where if you get drubbed early on in the tournament, they have you show up when you're like, this is ridiculous. It's Sunday. Nobody should be out of bed. So there's a double-edged sword there. So we show up there, and we get up early on a team. We stay up on them. What is it? 3-2, and then 5-2, and then we run into a bad inning where they end up putting, I want to say it was 6 on us in an inning, which is painful. So now it's 8-5, and the boys come back and they get a run, and then it's 8-6, and then this team scores again and makes it 9-6. And then we come back and put 3 on them, and now it's 9-9. Time has expired. It's an hour and 45 minutes, or typically 6 innings, whichever shows up first. And now it's 9-9.
Got to keep going.
Come back. We're playing another. This game is the longest baseball game these kids have ever played, and we put up a 10th run. They put up a 10th run, and now we go into what is the bottom of the 9th. It is still 10-10. We're the home team, which is great. There are runners in scoring position, and Graham gets up to bat. There's a runner on second base. Graham gets up to bat, and you got to keep in mind, Graham has had the worst hitting season of his life.
You talked about how he struggled in Branson.
Yeah, I mean, like he has been, most of his entire life, he's been the 4-hole hitter, the number 4 hitter, which is where you put your reliable power, right? You know, if you're talking about speed for your first 2, your 4 hitter is your reliable. And he has struggled enough this season that he got moved down to be the 6th hitter. And that's a point of real pain for him, because, you know, and he's just, his body's changing, that he can still see the ball, but his hits are either they're going right to the guy or they're not super authoritative and all that. So he's just really struggling. So he gets up to bat, and I remember as he's in the batter's box getting warmed up for it, I walk up there and I film every time he's up to bat, because that's just what Dad does, and he always likes to watch it too. And I said, hey, son, you're exactly where you need to be. This is where you want to be. You want to be this guy at this moment. And then the other parents that are by me, and we're all so close, and they're just like, could you pile more pressure on him? I mean, is there something else you can say at this moment to make it worse? And I'm like, here I am thinking I'm doing something good. Like, buddy, don't worry about this. This is exactly where you're supposed to be. Second pitch, man, he drills one to almost straightaway center, over the head of the outfielder. Guy on second, walk off. We win this thing. Graham makes it to first, runs to second. And I've got this thing on video. Kids pour out of the dugout. The coach picks Graham up, throws him over his shoulder, and runs around the infield. And it was just,
that's fantastic.
Oh, man. And so the video is awesome.
Wonderful.
It's only ruined by the sound of a voice you're hearing now screaming, yeah! I mean, I'm just losing my freaking mind. In fact, during a break, if we could figure out a way to play it, and I hope it's profanity-free. There's a chance that it's not, but it was just Dad losing his mind, running around, and I felt bad for the other team for about no seconds, but for our guys, it was great. So now we go on to the semis. We're playing in the semis for the state championship now, and we play this team where we're keeping pace with them, and we end up falling a little bit behind, but it's like 7-5. And then we just fell apart. And again, I'm never going to blame the umps for the game, because there's so many other things that go into it. But at one point, they got 2 guys on. They got a dude at the plate who's sitting on 2 strikes. Pitcher throws a great pitch over the middle. Dude shows like he's going to swing, but holds back on the bat. In my opinion, and in fact, everyone on our side, clearly the dude goes over the plate. That should have been a strike. End of the inning. Ump calls it a ball, says he didn't go over the plate. And we're like, ah! Next pitch, dude hits a home run. 3 runs up on us. We never recover. We end up losing. I think it was like 10-5 or 10-6 or something. And so we lose, and we end up going home once again, knocked out right before the big final round. But it didn't matter because the team that our guys played, these guys had just won their semifinal round with a walk-off grand slam.
Yeah.
And then crushed the team that beat us. Like they were up at one point 24-10 or something ridiculous, the Cardinals. But I'll say this, the other bracket that got generated out of this whole rained out thing, we're a team called Prime. We play for USA Prime. The other USA Prime team that's 13U is coached by a guy named Jack Burke, who's just a great coach, great motivator for kids, real leader. And their team won the whole damn thing, man. Wow. Like, he came and sat down to watch our boys play for a bit. And I said, hey, how'd it go, man?
Great.
And he holds up his hand, and he's got the big old state champion ring on it. And I'm like, oh, man, that is just so great for you. Nice. Just such a good time. And then when afterwards we went across the street to go have dinner up there in Louisville at some place that has the beer set up where you give them your credit card and then they give you some other card. It's very cruise ship like, where you lose track of how much you're spending. And they have all of the like froyo style beer taps where you can just walk along and fill up and keep getting liquored up.
You just suicide it the whole night.
That's great. So
oh my God.
All the parents go over there. Well, the other Prime team is there that won it all, and all the kids just hung out and had a great time. And parents, I don't know, man. It was a late evening. Didn't get home till after 9:30, and then the 2 boys, Trey and Jeff, were there, and we're in the process of trying to get through all 1 through 6 of the Mission Impossible movies before tomorrow, because Big Daddy got us all tickets to go see MI7 or whatever the hell it's being called now. Yeah, so at 9:30, I'm like, you guys still want to see the Mission Impossible 4?
Yeah.
And Trey and Jeff were like, yeah, let's do it. So there's Graham and I asleep on the couch.
Yeah, so you saw the opening credits.
Yeah, I saw some stuff. I saw Tom Cruise get out on the outside of the Burj Khalifa, and that was it.
Yeah,
and then afterwards,
night time for Dada.
And then I hear dun, 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 dun. I'm like, oh, it's over? What happened?
Yeah, what happened there?
So we got 2 more of those movies to try to fit in today amidst all the other stuff. But anyway, crazy weekend.
Oh, that's great.
So happy for Graham. And I should point out, that game ended on his bat. And again, when we were down 10-5, there, the next game also ended on Graham's bat. We had a runner on, Zachariah Rosebush, who's just a tremendous player. He was ahead of Graham, and Graham hit a sharp chopper that could have gone through the infield if the shortstop didn't have a glove. And so he got the ball, threw him out at first, and that was the end, man. It was just it was just nuts. But nonetheless, very happy for the other Prime team. Those kids deserve it. They are a great team. They work super hard. I just want, and this is twice now, we could have in a different world ended up, I won a finals where it's Prime v Prime. Now, we faced them once before this year, and it didn't go as well for our boys, but that creates a great matchup, right? Then it becomes revenge on our part. They get cocky, they're overconfident, and next time we only lose by 1.
That's
or
great.
something like that. But it's an end to the base. I can't believe it. It feels like 10 minutes ago I was like, hey, first tournament this year.
Yeah.
It's over. It's over. So now fall ball comes up, and I don't know when, man, but it's baseball. What do we do? Like, I'm lost. Like, I'm not driving him to practice this week. What are you talking? Idea. Nothing on the weekend. I can get up when I want.
You're not going to get weird orders from Chick-fil-A?
No.
You're driving home?
No weird orders from Chick-fil-A? Yeah. How are we functioning?
Exactly.
We're just going to stand around and look at each other on Saturday mornings. Like, so what are you going to do? I don't know. What are you going to do? I don't know. Let's just wait for August, I guess, before we go back. Anyway, once again, taking the segment long. In fact, we even got a nice text from our buddy Jack, the coach of the winning team, said, thanks for the shout out, man. And then he said, I owe you $1 million. And you're right, Jack, you do. I'm kidding. We're going to cut away for a break. We're going to come back. We're going to get caught up on the local news. I'm sure it's all uplifting over the weekend, called the Thorpe Report. And then we'll cut away for a quick break, come back for that dessert after your breakfast radio meal. Stick around. It's George Brauchler on The George Show. You're listening to 710 KNUS.
Imagine the lifelong impact of a journey to the Holy Land, surrounded by like-minded travelers. Picture yourself stepping foot in iconic locations right out of history. With nationally syndicated radio hosts Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher, you'll gain first-hand understanding of the spiritual and political importance of this vital region.
Hi, it's Mike Gallagher here. I hope you'll join Dennis Prager and me on an amazing journey through Israel in October 2023.
Discover Israel's vibrant culture and why this nation is such a strategic partner for the United States. Join Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher on this life-enriching Israel tour, October 25th through November 3rd, 2023. For more information, call 855-565-5519 or visit standwithisraeltour.com.
Want to take your favorite radio station wherever you go? Well, now there's an app for that. No matter where you are, stream your favorite shows. Tap the app to listen to podcasts. Talk back to your favorite local hosts.
At the tone, leave a message.
Call the show. Set your alarm. Enter contests and win prizes. All in the palm of your hand. Available now for iOS and Android devices in the App Store or Google Play. And best of all, it's free. Download today.
George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. Man, that was a long break. Some texters come in here. I forgot to mention, we're up on the Rumble, but guess what, folks? Today, we are back on the YouTubes. Right now, if you go out to YouTube, you can find us again. I think it's the same old channel. Mark apparently continued to beat down on the YouTube people about the idea of, freedom of speech, free expression, and all that. The spirit of it. Obviously, YouTube's not a government yet. And they relented, and they've decided to let us back up, and we can actually say words like election integrity and stolen election and election dysfunction and ED and all sorts of things like that. And so we're up on the YouTube and the Rumble, and that leads me into the next segment here. If you can please just sit back, open your ears, allow yourselves to be made smarter about everything going on in the community right now with our friend Billy Thorpe with the Thorpe Report.
Hey, good morning, sir. Now expect highs in the 90s for the next couple of days.
Oh.
Mountains are going to be in the upper 70s. Drier air is settling in this week. A few storms are expected. Monday is going to be the best chance of isolated storms along the eastern plains and some near the Kansas border. But summertime heat is here for the next couple of weeks. Also, Summit County Sheriff's Office is investigating a shooting involving a deputy and an officer that happened Sunday morning. Left one male suspect dead. Nobody else was injured. Happened in the Summit Cove subdivision around 7:20 in the morning. That's off of Idlewild Drive at Summit Drive.
Wait, where?
Idlewild Drive, Summit County. So, yeah.
Spook me.
Yeah, Summit Cove subdivision. Upon arrival, Sheriff's Office said deputies and officers from other agencies attempted to de-escalate a situation, gave commands to the male that was there, waving a firearm around and banging on doors. They asked him to drop his weapon. He politely turned around and pointed the weapon at them. And we both know what happens then.
Yep. They hugged him.
Exactly. I said, would you like some candy? And can we talk about this? Law enforcement rendered immediate medical aid after the shooting, but they were unable to revive him. They have not released name or age. Police in Denver investigating.
By the way, isn't that the craziest thing?
Yeah.
They put rounds in you, center of mass, boom, boom, and then they quickly run to you and you're like, how can we undo this?
Yes.
How can we save you?
That has got to be, as a police officer, that's got to be one of the most difficult things to do.
Crazy.
Yeah, because you've got to go from defend and protect to save immediately. Yeah, right away. That's got to be such a difficult thing to do. Police in Denver investigating a shooting that left one person dead early on Sunday morning. Happened in the 1200 block of Yates Street, according to DPD tweet that happened around 2:19 in the morning. The victim was located and pronounced deceased. They have not released any other information, no arrests or anything else about what happened. Denver police have also arrested two suspects in the deadly shooting of a motorcyclist on I-70. They've arrested Cesar Ramirez Rivera, 21, and Nelson Miranda Rivas, 25, in the July 4th shooting that killed 32-year-old Kyle Van Luzenoord. That's a lot of O's in that name. Okay.
That doesn't sound French at all.
Not at all. Both are being held for investigation of first-degree murder. They're still investigating as to what exactly led to the shooting. Also, we have a new safety chief for Denver Public Schools that is reporting for duty today.
Tay Henderson.
Greg Cazell was announced. No, that's no. Okay, no,
sorry.
I can't say that. Sorry. Sometimes there are things that go on in here that they should not come outside.
The filter work.
Yeah.
Everyone, write this down.
Every once in a while.
Billy's filter work.
Every once in a while. Oh, that would have been bad. Okay. Greg Cazell was announced as DPS as new chief of climate and safety last month. So basically, he's coming in. Also, researchers at the University of Colorado at Boulder have achieved a major breakthrough. This is kind of cool in plastic recycling. They're able to use electricity and chemical reactions to break down bottles and other packages into their individual atoms and then put them back together.
As what?
Yeah, as better bottles. So right now you have to, in recycling, it has something called decycling, where it starts at the top of the plastic food chain, and then as it gets recycled, it has to be used for lower and lower product level products.
Until it becomes food.
Yeah, for fish, yes, or for us. It's what's in the McNuggets at McDonald's. And so it's magic. So now they're able to basically, like Legos, pull apart the individual atoms or chemical pieces of the bottle and then re-put them back together, because then you're just left with Lego pieces. So it's much easier. This could actually lead to something, not now, but in the future, some really, really efficient recycling, something that could make it much better and much more efficient than what we have right now.
I'm scared.
So it's a positive.
I'm scared.
Yeah.
Because if they're able to, pretty soon they're going to be shooting things across the airwaves like, what's his name? TV.
Yeah, Mike TV.
Mike TV.
Yeah, Mike TV.
We're going to all of a sudden have the Mike TV thing with these broken down particles. And as a quick aside, a friend of mine, a guy named Dave Piggott, he's also a lieutenant colonel in the Army. He showed me yesterday some Chat GPT stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And how lawyers are starting to use this thing.
Yes. Yeah.
Buddy, we're all going to be replaced. The only thing they can't figure out how to do, my guess is there's always going to be a market for trial attorneys. So thank you.
Yeah.
But some of the other stuff, like your transactional lawyers, your document-based lawyers, find another profession because these things are going to wipe you out, man.
Yeah, so and we're already seeing lawsuits. We talked about it last week. There's some people suing because of ChatGPT just taking their stuff and using it. And comedian Sarah Silverman is suing ChatGPT for the same thing, for copyright infringement. She's saying these are my comedic sets and this is my copyrighted material, and you're using it and turning it around and spitting it out, and you're not paying me for it. So this could be a real interesting one.
You'll remember there was a case where some lawyers just in New York just simply used ChatGPT to generate motions and filed them, and it turns out there were some problems. So
it used fake court cases.
Yeah, so I asked Dave about
most of the court cases
and I
exist.
said, Dave, how do you isn't there a huge risk? He goes, yeah, if you don't check the work and shepherdize it and stuff, which is a way to look at cases and make sure they're still good law. And he said, because the risk is that the AI will just invent cases. I said, that's kind of a big deal. I go, how does it even know to do that? And he's like, well, because it knows what case language is. It knows what a citation looks like. And it just kind of fills in the blanks. I'm like, that seems scary.
Yes,
he's like, it is, but about 90% of what it generates is still good law. And I'm like, oh boy, we're in trouble.
And I keep looking at this going, if that was the new intern or paralegal at the office, I don't think you would let them continue to write the briefs. If they were just, sometimes, Scotty's really good, but occasionally he just makes up court cases. Maybe Scotty shouldn't be writing this stuff anymore.
Right. This is but this one, it doesn't cost much. Apparently there's GPT Plus. Which allows you to have like greater access to more potentially fake information, but also an unlimited. I mean, he sat down and I said, look, make a trust for me.
Yeah.
Just like pretend I need a trust, generate a trust. And so he types in the prompts and this thing spits out something that is, as best I can tell, largely compliant with Colorado form and law and all this. I'm like, what in the hell is going on?
That is crazy.
They stopped feeding it information in 2021 because they didn't want it, I don't know, to have enough information to blow up the world or something like that. But I'm thinking, this is crazy. In fact, what we ought to do, Billy, is we ought to say two different things. One, I'll do it and you do it. But do ChatGPT, like write a you choose the news thing. Like give us the funniest news, the funniest 3 news stories of 2020, because you can't do it for yesterday. And then I'll do one like at one point it was like write a closing argument based on these facts. And holy crap, it did.
Wow.
It wrote a closing argument.
There is an AI jock that's out there right now on a station, and I've listened to it a handful of times, and it's awful. Absolutely awful.
Really?
It's like first-year broadcaster stuff. And the issue is there's no emotion in the delivery. It's, that was this by Taylor Swift, and now the Beach Boys. It's very flat. It doesn't understand.
But it's just giving you the text. It's not reading it.
No, it's reading. It's a voice.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that is lame.
Yeah, it is lame. And speaking of lame, I'm done.
That's it?
Yeah, that's all we got.
Well, listen, we might as well cut away and come back and give you as much time as we can for the good stuff. I'm not sure ChatGPT can do this. This will be what separates us from the AI, Billy, as you choose the news. Stick around for it. We'll be back in just a second. It's George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. We are back in black right here at 710 KNUS. George Brauchler with you on The George Show. It's time to turn it over once again to the master of ceremonies for You Choose the News, William.
Yes, sir, you are correct. It is that time in the morning where we play everybody's favorite fake radio news game show, You Choose the News. We have scoured the interwebs over the entire weekend. And we're exhausted. To find really ridiculous stories and put fake headlines on them to play this fake radio news game. Why? Because, well, they continue to pay us. In fact, the check is cleared today, and it is from a very famous company. So we'll see what happens. They are offering a brand new product coming to the market. We'll get to that in just a moment, because first, we must play the game. Alrighty, sir. Here are your headlines this morning. Not AI. It's time to be afraid of the goats. Headline number 2, maybe you don't film it. Headline number 3, affordable flex or horror film setting. And headline number 4, William Shakespeare is sad. Alrighty, your headlines yet again are not AI, but be afraid of the goats. Maybe you don't film it. Affordable flex or horror film setting. And William Shakespeare is sad. Your choice, sir.
Advice our Stephen Tubbs should have taken. Maybe you don't film it.
Yeah, maybe you don't film it. That's what a man in Canada has recently found out. A young 22-year-old man was driving his 2022 Chevy Corvette and decided that when the lovely Japanese-made green motorcycle pulls up next to him on the area of Steeles Avenue and Airport Road that, yes, it's time to find out who is the man? And they promptly race down the road. The driver reached speeds of 226 kilometers per hour, which is about 140 miles per hour here.
Dang, that's still
Sounds
good.
much better than kilometers,
Yeah,
I'm
that's
just saying. But, however, that was an 80-kilometer mile per hour zone. So he's doing approximately 87 miles over the speed limit.
Uh-oh.
Yes, so what happens is, now nothing happened to him that day, but strangely enough, the idiot decides to post his speed race with the motorcycle. And a few days later, police show up, knock, knock, knock. Hi, sir. We saw your lovely video. Here, can you please have these nice sparkly silver bracelets and this new ticket? Thank you very much, and you'll be surrendering your license in the near future. Yeah, because he posted it, the police were allowed to track him down and figure out who he was.
I just love that.
Yeah.
Buddy, there's a story I want to talk about, but I can't do it now because I want to hear the other stories. By the way, Shakespeare's sad.
Shakespeare's sad. William Shakespeare is very sad, and this comes to us from Washington. And this mother wanted to give her soon-to-be daughter a very unique name. You know how that is. And many times, people will say, it's good to name the kid after the grandparents. Oftentimes, you have one grandparent as the first name, second grandparent as the middle name. But this woman would not be denied.
What?
She decided, no, that is for average people. I am going to give my soon-to-be daughter a very unique name by combining the names of both grandfathers. Again, remember, naming the daughter, combining the names of the grandfathers. What are the grandfathers' names? They are named Quinn and Christopher. Yes, so here in just a few months, they will proudly be welcoming young Quintifer into the world.
No.
It is, I'm sorry, no, it's Quiftifer. Sorry, it's Quiftifer. That's even better. It's young Quiftifer.
And the shortened version is
Q-U-I-F-T, yeah.
Come
Quiftifer.
on, man. No one's going to do that.
Yes.
No one's going to do that.
So soon we can welcome young Quiftifer into the world.
Did ChatGPT generate that story?
No,
There's nobody in the world would name their kids something where kids at school will be like, hey, Quiff, you coming over to play some jacks or something?
I know. Yes, young Quiftifer is going to have a really tough life.
No. What country was that?
It's in England.
Okay. Well, listen, until they figure out dentistry, I'm happy to ridicule them for a whole bunch of name-related things.
The story was off the wire in Washington, but it's a woman in England.
God almighty.
So, yeah. Alrighty, final choice this morning. Not AI, but be afraid of the goats, or affordable flex, or horror film setting.
Goats.
Yes. We had talked about AI earlier, but maybe you shouldn't be afraid of the AI. Maybe it's actually the goats that are coming for your job. Well, out in Southern California, soon it is going to be wildfire season. So they have decided, rather than to get prisoners or fire, people out there, the firemen or anything else out there clearing the brush and the scrub, they are instead employing the goats. They have hundreds and hundreds of goats that are working their way through the scrub in order to mitigate before the wildfire season. They say this is wonderful because, the goats work from like 10 in the morning until 5 at night. They don't really need any sort of a lunch break because they're eating all the time, and you pretty much pay them in sticks. So it's, kind of a win-win for everybody.
That story wasn't that bad.
No, that is awful. That is horrible. And speaking of horrible, yes, that is the end of today's You Choose the News. As always, George is our winner and I'm a giant loser. But today, we are proud to announce Ben & Jerry's has some new flavors to commemorate America's birthday. Yes, you can get 20% off if you order online today and mention the show. You can get their brand new Indigenous Rocky Road. You also can try Colonization Crunch, Subjugation Sherbet, and Blanket Pox Butter Pecan Surprise, which has caramel-flavored Pop Rocks on the inside.
Oh,
yes.
Good God.
Order your Ben & Jerry's to honor America's birthday today. Back to you, sir.
Oh, buddy, that was fantastic. In fact, that leads me to want to listen for the 7 o'clock hour. I'll be honest with you, the roadmap just we ran out of road somewhere in there, but I want to update you on the Ben & Jerry's thing. If you don't know the story that Billy's talking about, it's a gem, and there's a follow-on piece to this whole thing. And then in the 8 o'clock hour, we're going to be joined by the chairman of the state GOP party. His name is David Williams. He's been on a bunch. He'll continue to be on a bunch. We're going to interview him about things the way they stand today. You stick around with us. We'll be right back. It's George Brauchler on The George Show. You're listening to 710 KNUS. Did you hear what happened after they made? George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. It's the 7 o'clock hour. That tells you we've got 3 hours left before we turn it over to
You
Charlie.
could probably get an
Kirk, the
entire
national-
body into that freezer, maybe.
Well, we were talking about needing a garage fridge / freezer, and I said I've never had one of the cool ones that open up, like a coffin, or I don't know how to describe it. And Billy's like, oh, the kind you can put a body in. And I'm like, yes, but not for that purpose.
But that's
right?
always the one of the crime shows. That's always what they always find him in that, and they lift up the lid, and there's the body.
And
that's
if
always.
you find the body in the stand-up fridge, it's usually because they've dismembered them. You know what I mean? And they stick them in there.
Yeah,
that
done
way.
all Dahmer and stuff on
Yeah.
them.
Or they've taken out all the shelves, which would be an obvious tell. Like, where are you putting all your shelves? And they just seat them in there. Anyway, so I've got to find one of those things. Listen, Billy finished up with a You Choose the News. And actually, was this the Thorpe Report or You Choose the News where you went Billy, or where you went Ben and Jerry's?
That would be You Choose the News.
You Choose the News.
Yeah.
So
I try to block it out too.
if you don't know the story, here's what happens. We had a 4th of July, we call it Independence Day here, a celebration less than a week ago. In fact, it'll be a week ago tomorrow. And the good folks at Ben & Jerry's have come out again. As you may know, they are kind of woke. And by kind of, I mean so incredibly woke, sometimes it makes your tummy hurt. Because their ice cream is good, man. It's legit stuff. I like it. I went on a tour of the Ben & Jerry's factory or headquarters when I was asked to go give a talk at the Vermont Military Institute, VMI, up there. And so I had a couple hours of downtime. I'm going to go to the Ben & Jerry's thing. It wasn't as awesome as the Coors tour because I didn't really learn that much about the ice cream making process, but they do have free samples at the end, and frankly, that made it all worthwhile. Nonetheless, the folks at Ben & Jerry's came out with some social posts that were, I don't know how to describe it, folks. I'm going to read it to you if you don't know it. This is their post on Independence Day. And there's a little pictographic thing here, too. It's an African-American or dark, I'm not African-American's wrong. It's a person of color hand holding a sign that says, "This is stolen land." And it reads, "The United States was founded on stolen indigenous land. This 4th of July, let's commit to returning it." Now, listen, once you can get past the bonkers notion that is, I presume we're going to trade back Manhattan for the bag full of beads or whatever it is that we did. But that's just the kind of bonkers thing that Ben & Jerry says, because it's the kind of platitude you don't get held accountable for. And yet now all of a sudden there's the chief of the Nulhagen Band of the Kusuk Abenaki Nation. I didn't know they had a chief. I thought that they were like a parliament. No, I'm kidding. But his name is Don Stevens, which is the least Native American stereotypical sounding name I've ever heard, right? Like Don Stevens. He's going to take them up on their offer, and he said to them, hey, we're looking forward to Ben & Jerry's returning the land that their headquarters sits on because it is Native American land. That no joke. I mean, this is a real thing. Ben & Jerry's after their social media post said, hey, the United States should start with returning Mount Rushmore. And they said the faces on Mount Rushmore are the faces of men who actively work to destroy indigenous cultures and way of life. And so Chief Don Stevens, I'm not even sure if that's the right use of his title with his name, but Chief Don Stevens has said, hey, we're all about it. He said, if you look at the Abenaki traditional way of being, we are place-based people. Before recognized tribes in the state, we were the ones who were in this place. We were stewards of the land. Humans have a responsibility to take care of resources and places because we have the ability to destroy. And then this guy says, well, I haven't had a conversation with yet, so I can't make a judgment about whether they're going to live up to it. But I love this story. I love the idea when the woke turns on itself and starts eating itself. There's nothing better than that. I don't know how else to describe it. This isn't, I don't want to use snakes as an example because a snake could eat its own tail and swallow. This isn't a dog that chases its own tail. These are two rabid, horrible dogs in your neighborhood attacking each other. And you think to yourself, I don't care how it turns out. We're all winners when this thing ends. That's what's going on here. It's also like when AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she is the bartender / congresswoman from New York who is part of the squad. That's the 4 craziest members of the House. And she has come out to support the reelection of Joe Biden. And guess who turns on her? The progressives from the group that she's a part. I mean, you can't help but love these moments. And by the way, just in case you think to yourself, oh, this is just about Brauchler throwing punches at the left. No. I mentioned to Billy, and I think he'd seen it too. You guys see what happened to MTG? You see what happened to Marjorie Taylor Greene? Oh, yeah. She got voted out of the Freedom Caucus, man.
She's not freedomy enough.
She's not freedomy enough anymore.
Not enough freedom.
Because she actually rubbed up against Kevin McCarthy at some point without pushing back and yelling, "You're a groomer."
Yeah, that's a weird one. It seems like I guess I don't know the direction the Freedom Caucus is trying to go. I guess I don't know what they're doing, because it seems to me that Marjorie has run afoul of them simply because she is working with McCarthy and helping some legislative agendas move forward. And that's strange to me, because what I need to know is, I want to know, is the Freedom Caucus there just to set up roadblocks? Is that what their purpose is? That they're just supposed to be the sand in the gears. They're supposed to slow things down. Is that their purpose? And if it is, then what I would like to do is understand, is there a goal towards this purpose, or is it just to muck things up? And if it's just to muck things up, then I want to sit down with them and maybe discuss a little larger the ideas that our founding fathers had when they put together this governing system, because that wasn't the idea. They weren't. No. It was built on the idea of compromise. And
oh my God! If you look at the history of just the Declaration of Independence and what language was not included in prior drafts, it was taken out, and the Constitution itself, the entire thing is premised on compromise. Yeah. And now we've got a place where this document that was the product of compromise, we look at and say, well, we have to be uncompromising from this point forward. Yes. It's like, wait, what happened to the whole... Anybody ever look at how the South and the North got together and the different horse trading that went on in order to get, I guess, consent to this thing? It's not like... It's not like they were the 10 Commandments coming down from God to Moses. These were things that men created. Yeah. And they did, and yes, I get it, men. But they created this thing, and some liked it, some didn't. But at the end of the day, man, they all threw their names behind it and their votes, and that was it. Yeah, and when you look at that generation of the Constitution and what was important to them, it had to be built on compromise, because what they figured out is that if one group only got their way, then it alienates the other group. And if both sides or multiple groups have to come together, yes, you get something that is imperfect and not necessarily the best for any one of those groups. However, it does hit the middle of the road. And that's it. It seems to do the least amount of potential harm when they're coming together and they agree. But when one side or another side gets an outsourced voice, then things begin to tilt a little bit more. And I would say, see, gerrymandering on some of those ideas, because Ben and gerrymandering.
Yes, Ben and gerrymandering.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, but when you give one group control and say, here, you get to draw all the lines, I'm sure you're going to do it fairly. No, you won't. But I can't fault them for doing it that way. But that's kind of the real world example we have of when one group is allowed to make all the rules. That's necessarily what happens, and neither side, is, as much as they moan about what happens to them, neither side, is very nice when they get the chance to make the rules. But there's got to
be a better word than schadenfreude to describe these moments, because that's just, gleefully watching someone else in trouble. There is part of that, but there's got to be some other term, Billy, and I'm not a big wordsmith guy, even though I'm in the business of words, but I'm not. And that is this idea that Ben & Jerry's comes out and announces, we must return the land stolen from the indigenous people. And the indigenous people show up and say, you're standing on it.
Yeah. Thank you. Can we have the keys now, sir?
It's just such a gleeful moment.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Or AOC, who continues to thunder for the progressive stuff, comes out for Biden, and the progressives turn on her.
Yes.
It's like, I don't know how else to describe it, but there's the invasion of the body snatchers thing. At the moment, I'm trying to think of one at the end of the movie. If you guys haven't seen this, I'm so sorry. This is the second remake, or the first remake, I guess, with Donald Sutherland, where he's walking around at the end and you don't know who is this and who is that, and someone's like, hey, are you still okay? And then he does that thing, and I love these moments where they just turn on each other. This is Children of the Corn. This is
a good one.
This is the end scene in Children of the Corn, where the little dude walks out of the corn and he goes, Malachi, he wants you too. And it's like, that's what's happening. I love these moments.
It is, and of course, Ben and Jerry's was preaching. They were looking down on everybody else. Go, oh, stop the celebrations.
We are so holy.
Yes, and we understand this better than you do. And I love the fact that someone stood up and goes, okay, I'm going to call you on your BS. Let's talk about this. That, and again, they always say that, the first step should be acknowledging your own sins, and giving begins at home. So I think Ben and Jerry's should immediately start turning over. Yes.
Yeah, vacate the premises, turn them back over, dismantle the premises.
Absolutely. And the thing is, let's see if they have the courage of their convictions. If they really honestly believe this. If this is something that they, at their core, say, that's a stolen land. We can't do this.
Stolen land.
Good. Or pay them for it. Yeah, you got a big paycheck.
That's right.
Big giant. You can give them one of those
Make
big
it very
novelty
public.
checks. Yeah, go right ahead and pay them for it.
And maybe free, fish food for life or something, or whatever they like.
Yeah. At least.
Maybe rename all of the ice creams after different tribes that they have dominated their land for so long, or something, like Chief Don Stevens ice cream or something like that. Or I love these things. The other one, though, the MTG one, is also important because I think on a microcosm level, only compared to the national stuff, we're starting to see something like that taking place here.
Yeah.
Now, I'm thrilled to have David Williams on in the 8 o'clock hour. I presume that's still going to happen because there's definitely things that we want to talk about. I'm on the distro list for all the state GOP stuff, and there are a lot of things that are going on out there that are, in my opinion, a bit unprecedented. Not entirely. In fact, our friend Dick Wadhams had a column in the Gazette where he highlighted that something like what's happening now had sort of reared its head back in 1996 when the last Republican governor elected in Colorado, and the first one in a ton of years. The only Republican governor we've had in half a century, maybe more.
Ooh, that's not
when he was on the road to becoming the nominee, there was a state party chair who was completely adverse to him because he wasn't conservative enough and all this other stuff. And then I think we'd gotten past that, and now we're back there again in a way, and I sort of want to figure out, and we discussed this when the chair race came open, and that is there a purity test here that we're about to go through? And, what are the prospects for the future? What's the role of the Republican Party? So, by the way, since we're going to have Dave on at 8, if you've got questions you think that you would want to ask Dave, and I don't know if we get him for 2 segments or not. Maybe we ask him, maybe we text him or something, but I don't know. I'd love, and didn't he tell us he might take questions last time?
Yeah,
or was that a different guy?
Yeah,
he might.
He said he might, but we'll
I don't
see.
want to commit him to something.
Again, I don't know schedules like
today
either.
Because I know the dude's busy running a statewide organization, so I don't want to treat that like he's just got a ton of free time. But if he does, if you've got questions, I would love to be able to pose those to Dave about the direction of the party. But it's all kind of leading up to a discussion of this each your own sort of approach. Yeah. Are we doing that, or is that somebody else? Like, what's our path?
And even you have been called a RINO. I've been called lots of other things.
on this radio station.
Yes, a lot of them. And I find that interesting because I get it why people are mad and say, well, Republican in name only. But that seems to be based on a purity test. But the issue I've got is, don't you need more people on your side in order to do the voting to get stuff done? And the example that I would give would be Manchin, because Manchin is vitally important.
And he's
to the
about to go the way of the dodo, too.
He is, and deservedly so. But because they have got, again, tip of the hat, Mitch McConnell, I'm not always your favorite guy, and I don't like him as much, but you have got the right guy to take on.
Holy crap, man.
Take on Manchin. Absolutely the right candidate. And that seat, Manchin's going to have to fight for his life in order to hang on to it. But the Democrats, when I was hearing them saying, we're mad at Manchin, he's not letting us pass a progressive agenda, we need to kick him out of the party. I'm like, yeah, go ahead. Good. Make sure you don't have a majority. That would be so stupid.
Scare him into the Republican Party.
I was really surprised they didn't do it. I thought they were dumb enough to do that. And that's what I kind of look at is these are chess pieces on the board. And if you can get more of your color chess pieces, that is better for your strategy and for you to implement what you need to do. Does Manchin slow up what the Democrats do a lot of times? Yes. Thank you. I appreciate that a lot. But he still allows them control. Without him, they don't get that control. So there's part of it where when you start labeling people as RINOs and trying to vote them off the island, are you necessarily, based on that action, are you then preventing yourself from allowing them to, implement conservative policies? Are you giving up power? Are you giving up control because of this purity test?
Well, I'm still taken with the notion that we did a segment or two on the show here recently where it was like, what is a RINO? Describe for me a RINO without referencing Donald Trump. And it was impossible. There were a couple folks that had some good ideas on, hey, this is the international stuff and all that. And, pull up the portcullis and all that stuff and get everybody back from our military abroad and then close it all up. But short of that, I don't think anybody can do it. And then, here we are facing the Manchin thing as another great example. You know who else where the Democrats are going to eat their own is they did it in Arizona. Kristen Sinema.
Oh, yes.
She bails on the Democrat Party and is like, screw you, and becomes an unaffiliated. That's got to be great for Republican opportunities there, whether it's Kari Lake or anyone else, having two people drinking out of the same trough. That's great for us.
Oh, yeah, and it's great with Kristen because what's going to happen is that is probably going to end up being a Republican seat. Unless, again, let's see what happens. Arizona GOP is a little bit wonky right now, but there's no reason it shouldn't be because everything that I'm seeing, Sinema can't win as she's not going to get any votes from Democrats. She's not going to get any votes from Republicans.
They would have primaried her, man.
Yes.
That's that whole eat your own. Each party has this small group on the fringes, on the extremes, that want to drive the party and the candidates. And when they've got candidates that can continue to win across party lines and dip into those unaffiliates, they're like, well, kill them off.
Yeah. Because they're not pure enough.
They're not pure enough. And I think it's this mistaken belief that because we're right and we have the right values, folks will agree with us. And as long as we can just continue to talk to them about the things we believe in, if we can just say pro-life enough, other people will agree with us. And that will never, ever happen. We have got to take victory where we can. And I'm not saying compromise to the extent of saying whatever we got going on in Colorado, which I think is arguably the most liberal abortion policy on the planet Earth. But this idea that we need to have these purity tests on an individual, whether it's Trump, this is going to lead us to do this eat your own thing. And I'm anxious to see how 24 turns out. But when I say anxious, I mean like it's a roller coaster where I'm not sure there's a crack in the post up ahead. That story that we did. Like, is it going to hold together or are we going to fly off into the parking lot?
Yeah, and the other part that worries me, and Colorado's a great microcosm. And the example, I love the fact that you brought up the pro-life, pro-choice argument, because Colorado's incredibly liberal. And the purity test on the Republican side right now is you must be pro-life. Where if I was trying to gain power, and again, don't listen to me, I'm an idiot. But if I was going to try and gain power, if I was going to try to find a way for Republicans to have a larger foothold, I would be concentrating on where is that delineation point for people that are pro-choice for when they don't think there should be an abortion afterwards. I know that we have Frank that calls up and talks about, the Democrats crushing babies' heads. We also know that statistically that is a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a percent of the procedures. So labeling it that way is disingenuous and doesn't help the cause. But where is it? And we've talked about it both on air and off air, that I hear all the time from the conservative side of the aisle. Well, the liberals want late-term and third-term abortions up until the moment of birth. Okay. Then when you're proposing your rules, why are you focusing on 6 weeks? Why are you focusing on the first trimester? If it's the third trimester that's pissing you off, focus on that. What I would be doing is try to figure out what's that delineation point for the average voter in Colorado, and that's where the Republicans plant their stake right now. We want to outlaw abortion after this point. Boom. Yeah. Now you've got something you can win on and run on, and then you also have the ability, but you also have the ability to label the Democrats as being crazy. And if they go, no, we can't do that, now you've wedged them into that extreme abortion position. But until you define that, and yes, I understand that the goal is eventually you don't want the abortions to occur, but you can't necessarily let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And that's what I see over and over again.
Well, and I keep going back to Ted Trempa, who, by the way, the handful of folks that are like, I can't believe you. It's like, I'm going to have Ted on anytime Ted wants to come on, especially during the election, because he just offers a different insight. Yeah. And if you're looking for a guy who the other side would call a dino, a Democrat name only, it'd be Ted, because the party has moved so far to the left of this guy who was the architect of the damn blueprint. But he had said, and somebody texted in and got it almost right, and that is, listen, Republicans want to be right. Democrats want to be in power.
That's a good point.
And I'll be honest with you, at this point, I would trade the latter for the former. I mean, the problem that we're running into in Colorado with just the pro-life issue, and I don't want to turn this into a pro-life show today, but is that we did that due date too late bill. We got it on the ballot. It went out there. And it lost by a healthy margin. That's got us, and that was not the legislature. That was you and I voting for this thing.
Yeah.
And it tells me that there is just no appetite at all for any sort of abortion limitation legislation that we hoped for.
There's a little pushback I would do on that one. And again, I could have my facts and figures wrong because I didn't go and research this one beforehand. But I thought that the due date too late was somewhere around 16 to 20 weeks, somewhere in there, which when you label it as due date too late, that 16 to 20 weeks from my math is second trimester, not third.
Yeah.
And that's my example, is if it was due date too late, then it should have been third term stuff. That's where that should have been, and you probably could have won that one. But when you say due date and you're in the second trimester, your label is wrong. The average voter is going to look at that and go, wait a minute. That's not due date. That's not even close to due date. In fact, some of the babies born struggle for life and don't make it and spend weeks, if not months, in the NICU. And so that to me is that was a bad choice. It was a clever name, but it was a bad branding and marketing choice for that particular measure.
Someone texting, hey, I quit donating to the Colorado GOP because I'm not down with Dave. Doesn't seem like he's got a grasp on an executable operation plan to find and support candidates, raise money, or make any changes to the status quo. Listen, I've heard that. I've also heard a lot of favorable things from folks in the party, folks who I consider to be friends who are like, hey, man, this is exactly what we need. We needed someone to stand up and say this constant bending over backwards to accommodate the left doesn't make us Republicans. And we need to do something about that.
It really is.
Here's one. There's a coloring book. This looks like some sort of a book. This is the perfect description of the grassroots Republicans, a phrase with no specificity. We did ask about that, too, and that is what does make America great again, too? And I'm always open to having those conversations. Our friend Joan says that MTG is out of the Freedom Caucus because of her thrashing of Boebert. I'll bet you that added to it, Joan, but I'm not sure that was it. I think the die was cast when she stood up for McCarthy's speakership, right? Remember, they were going to hold that whole thing hostage until they got some more concessions and better parking spaces and stuff like that. And she threw her weight behind them. It'll be interesting. I wonder if they would ever primary her. She's sitting on $1 kajillion out there in her district in North Georgia. I wonder if they would ever primary her because of a perception that she's not conservative enough. She also did that Leslie Stahl interview on 60 Minutes, which I found to be fascinating. That was also very interesting to hear her talk some more. But this whole eat your own thing is, man, it's real, and I'm just wondering what this looks like in 2024. So let me leave this open to you for a conversation. 303-696-1971. This idea of whether it's the far left or the far right turning on itself, what other examples of that do you see out there, and is it healthy? Is this a good thing for the party? Is this the kind of thing that you want to see? And leading up to our conversation with Chairman Dave Williams up at the 8 o'clock, I'm interested in this, and that is, should we be cleaning house, whether it's Republicans or Democrats? Like, I'm just giggly over the Ben & Jerry's thing. Some folks texted in, including our friend Alexa, about Unilever purchasing them. I get it, but I just love the idea of Ben & Jerry's saying, we should give back these lands that have been stolen. And then the Native American guy, Chief Don Stevens, still awkward to say like that, showing up and saying, yes, can we start with your building? I mean, it's just laugh out loud funny. And AOC getting thrashed by the progressives that brought her forward. I mean, this is very French Revolution-y. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're just going to start beheading people. This is Les Miserables right here. We're going through this right now. We're going to cut away for a break. When we come back, I'll get to some of the texts. We've got some calls coming in. Join that conversation with us. It's George Brauchler on The George Show, 710 KNUS.
Want to take your favorite radio station wherever you go? Well, now there's an app for that. No matter where you are, stream your favorite shows. Tap the app to listen to podcasts. Talk back to your favorite local hosts.
At the tone, leave a message.
Call the show. Set your alarm. Enter contests and win prizes, all in the palm of your hand. Available now for iOS and Android devices in the App Store or Google Play. And best of all, it's free. Download today.
George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS, going right to the phone line, starting off with our friend Lynn on 710. Lynn, what do you think?
Hi, George.
Hey.
I was very involved with Due Date Too Late, working on that petition. But the big problem with it was there was no exception for rape and incest. And my grandkids, who are liberal, would have voted for it if they had
Would they really?
had that. And yes, and I think a lot of people would have. It's the problem with the Republicans. We jump right in, all or nothing. The Democrats are better at incrementalism, and we're not.
That's true.
And I think that was a huge mistake. I think that would have passed if we could have done that. And I agree with Billy on finding a line where Republicans and Democrats could agree on.
Lynn, on a broader sense, and that's great information. I had not thought of it in those terms, but if you do not create that exception for those extreme things, you're right, you're going to lose a lot of people. When you look at the broader issue of sort of this eating our own, and it's not just us, that's why I gave the examples of the whole Ben & Jerry's thing and the AOC thing and Kristen Sinema and all that other stuff. Where do you, and you've been, for folks that don't know, Lynn and Bo have been so active in building up the Republican Party abroad, but also in Arapahoe County. What are you seeing right now? Are there shoots of green there that are positive things? Are you worried about the whole, hey, we're eating our own? What are you seeing out there?
Well, I'm very worried about that. And I see kind of similar thing when we were talking about Bill Owens, when we had a chair that was so far right, we couldn't get anywhere until we got rid of him. And I sort of see that issue right now. Most people I know are not supporting the state party. There are radical emails coming out from Dave, and I wish him well. I really want them to do well, but I think they're driving the moderates away. I just think it's another problem for us.
That's interesting, and I have heard a lot of people share those concerns, Lynn. I've also had some folks who are obviously a little more to the right who are like, no, this is exactly what we need. We need to reprioritize and refocus and move forward. If you had the chance to ask Dave a question, what would you ask him?
How is he reaching out to unaffiliated?
Okay. You know what? That's a fair question. I will ask that. Lynn, thank you for calling in. Hi to Bo.
Okay. Thanks, George.
Bye now.
Bye.
Hey, Lynn's line is open, 303-696-1971. We're going to stay with the phone lines. We're going to Brian from Arvada. Sir, how are you?
Hey, good morning, George.
Morning.
I'm old enough. I've been around to see Colorado go from, blue to purple to red to,
reverse.
Red to purple to blue.
Yeah,
exactly.
I lived it, yeah.
And, I remember when Hickenlooper was running for governor as mayor of Denver, and I had a class that Andy Bowen, his chief advisor, taught. And they were talking about winning locally. And that's where we dropped the ball. The Democrats are socialists now. There's no blue dog Democrats anymore. They're all socialists, whether it's Polis, whether it's Hickenlooper, Bennett. They're all socialists. And if they don't bow at the altar of socialism, eventually their time is up. And they're on notice of that. So the Democrats, that's their story. Our story is, we concentrated on these big races for the last 10, 15 years and lost, when we should have been concentrating on local races, school boards, county boards, you name it, anything that city councils, DA's office, local DA's office. Yeah. That's where the Democrats focused so they could change policy. We're so far behind the 8 ball now with all these local races, we're never going to get it back. We're never going to get it back.
Well, never. I feel less certain about the never part on the local stuff than I do right now on the state stuff. I think it's far away. But your point is well made. And in fact, that was really the genesis of Advanced Colorado, was the idea that, hey, we have turned our backs on the smaller, more local races. And they don't play in the big stuff. They don't play in governor and U.S. Senator and all that. They only play in things like the town councils, the school boards, and House of Representatives, stuff like that. Because, like you, Brian, they were looking around and said, hey, we've just squandered the bench. We don't have a bench. We just keep putting all our money into the big ticket races. And when the electorate seems to have moved the way they have and they get the help from the mainstream media and all that, we're just losing. So you're right in that area. But when it comes to the local races or even the big ones, do you worry at all that we are doing this eat your own kind of thing? You heard what Lynn had to say. Lynn's undeniably a lifelong Republican who's worked great things for Arapahoe County and beyond. What do you think about that?
Oh, the Republicans do for sure. And, the Democrats are coerced into voting away or being a certain way, even if they don't want to, because they know if they don't, they're not going to get funded and their time is up. With Republicans, if you disagree with the old guard, the old GOP, then they just call you a radical and they call you're crazy and you can't win. Like we saw last election, it all started when they torpedoed Tancredo. That showed me that the old guard GOP in Colorado.
Which year are you talking about with Tom?
Oh, that was when he wanted to run for governor, and they torpedoed him because he made some comments about Mecca, and they totally crashed.
He ran
Tancredo.
twice. He ran twice. He ran that one time that
time.
we. Okay, so that was when.
No. It was the second time that he ran, and they ran. Well, who they ran? Mr. House, who got housed. Because again, I left the Republican Party when they torpedoed Tancredo, and the same people are pulling the levers.
I don't think Steve House was our nominee for that. But when you talked about Tom running, that second time I think was 2018. And if you'll recall, what happened is he'd been out of the game for a bit. He'd left Congress out of the 6th CD, and he jumped back in, and fundraising was a huge struggle. He could not turn on the national machine that he had when he was occupying that 6th CD. He'd been out of office since, for almost 6 years. And while he still had national name ID, he didn't have the fundraising. And I think what he found out, and if you ask him this, I think he'd admit this, in addition to all the other pressures, when you don't have the money, it just no sense in continuing on. And that's why he bailed on that race.
Well, I think it was the first time he ran because he was talking Trump before Trump.
But remember the first time he ran, it was part of this whole Dan May. Like there should have never been a Governor Hickenlooper, right? Like the polling was such that Scott McInnes was like double digits ahead of Hickenlooper. And then all of a sudden we had all that controversy where McInnes got punched with plagiarism. And then we ended up with that liar, Dan Mays, who was like, I was an undercover cop. And it turns out he was a desk jockey for 15 seconds and was hiring his daughter to drive
You're right. And
the
whose fault was that, George?
No, but
the old GOP gave us those people.
I'm saying that wasn't an attempt to keep Tancredo out, because Tancredo jumped in the only way that was available, and that was the American Constitution Party or whatever that was. And all we ended up doing was almost becoming a minority party because of that. So I don't know that this was, hey, we ganged up on Tancredo. It was just the circumstances of his entry in both of those races lent themselves to an unwinnable race.
Well, now what we have to do is concentrate on local races. We have to stop trying to run to the middle so we can get all these unaffiliated. And I'm not saying run hardcore. I'm with Billy. Put a flag in the ground on abortion, not never have one and not third term, but how about we draw a line in the sand and say, okay, if you can't make up your mind in 6 to 10 weeks.
That's a loser for us here, man. We couldn't win at 22. We're losing at 6 or 10 weeks.
Well, then you have to make a better argument then, because if you can't make up your mind in that amount of time, then I'm sorry. You lose the right to do it.
Here's what they'll tell you.
There's heartbeats going on here, George.
They'll tell you 6 to 8 weeks, there are a significant number of people that don't even know they're pregnant yet, or they just found out, or they don't. I mean, listen, you and I can agree,
well, then
can agree on the pro-life
not
thing.
6 to 8.
But if we didn't win at 22, and I think Lynn's point is really important, and that is, we didn't create any exceptions for the horrible stuff, for the rape and the incest.
Right.
I'm like, that makes sense to me.
And why didn't we? That's a losing argument.
I don't know.
Who isn't going to agree to that if you were forced, it was forced upon you or something
the church,
unfortunate happened to you?
The Catholic Church would say, I get it, that's horrible, you don't deserve that, but we don't answer that by ending another life. That's what the Catholic Church would say.
Well, that's a loser, George.
I agree with you. In Colorado, 100% it's a loser.
Position for me, and I'm a staunch Christian. It's still a losing argument for me. I want to give people the opportunity to get out of it. Even though I don't personally believe in that, I still want to give others the right. So we need more people like me who are staunch Christian. I've got my beliefs, but I don't want to press them on everybody else.
I agree.
And that's what the old GOP wants to do. It's time for new blood, and we have to reach out to people that are more unaffiliated but in a way that doesn't compromise our values. And no one can walk that walk. No one in the GOP can walk that walk. And Dick, what not to do, Wadhams is never going to give us any advice to get us there, George. He's never going to give us a piece of advice to get us to where we need to go. He never is. He needs to just retire and stop giving advice, because none of his advice is true,
Brian,
except for we're going to lose. We're going to lose.
I appreciate
we're going to
it.
lose.
Brian, we got to cut away for a break, man. Thanks. Have a great rest of your day. Jay and Sue and whoever else is calling in on Brian's line at 303-696-1971. Stick around. We're going to cut away for a break. We're going to come back. We're going to get made smarter, and I presume happier, by Amy Duncan from Alpine Planning. And then in the top of the 8 o'clock hour, we're going to have, I believe we're going to have David Williams on, and we'll have these conversations with him as well as the other stuff that's going on in the news. Stick around. It's George Brauchler on The George Show. You're listening to 710 KNUS.
Imagine the lifelong impact of a journey to the Holy Land, surrounded by like-minded travelers. Picture yourself stepping foot in iconic locations right out of history. With nationally syndicated radio hosts Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher, you'll gain firsthand understanding of the spiritual and political importance of this vital region.
Hi, it's Mike Gallagher here. I hope you'll join Dennis Prager and me on an amazing journey through Israel in October 2023.
Discover Israel's vibrant culture and why this nation is such a strategic partner for the United States. Join Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher on this life-enriching Israel tour, October 25th through November 3rd, 2023. For more information, call 855-565-5519 or visit standwithisraeltour.com.
George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. It's that time of the show. It's the best part of the Monday morning show, in my opinion. And that's when we get caught up on all the great financial stuff that's going to take place throughout the week with our buddy, Amy Duncan from Alpine Planning. Amy, did you have a good weekend?
Good morning, George. And yes, I did. I'm telling you what, nice to see that sunshine again, right?
Amen.
I'm ready for the
Amen.
90-degree weather.
Boom.
Holy guacamole.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Let me get this frog out of my throat. All right, cool. Diving right in. Starting the week off with some green numbers. Nothing large, but right now the Dow is up about 160. The S&P positive by 5 points. NASDAQ off slightly. The Russell is up another couple of points, and the volatility index is rather stabilized. So this is coming off of last week after strong economic data Thursday and Friday regarding the jobs numbers as well as inflation. Markets closed with a sell-off. The Dow finished the week down about 2%. The S&P was off 1.2. What are we watching this week? All eyes are going to shift to earnings, right? We've got the big financials that kick off later. BlackRock, JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, Citi, just to name a few. So the financials always lead the earnings reporting season, and this is going to be a big week as we see not only how markets are digesting those figures, but I think there's a lot under the spotlight regarding the banking sector right now, with everything regarding FedNow, instant payment system, central bank digital currency, which was just addressed in one of your ads earlier on the station. That's a long subject for another day that I'll save in case you'd like to dive deeper, George. But
Oh, yeah.
I just want to bring up a couple of subjects that aren't often addressed when we're talking so much about market movements and inflation and all of these different data points. But that's two pieces of financial planning that are very critical. As Brian and Gabe and I always say, our most successful clients end up bouncing pretty much every financial decision off of us. And two of these relate to lines of credit and then also long-term care. And, one is absolutely an answer for near-term liquidity as opposed to having to sell assets in a volatile market. The other, of course, is one of the least savory subjects that we deal with, but the second highest financial probability behind death, and really a way to try to help clients have an asset base where they don't have to spend down their retirement.
Yeah.
So keep in mind as we watch the markets move this week,
Awesome.
There's a lot of other questions that come into it,
Yep.
and if anyone needs some guidance, you know where to find us.
But I can't thank you enough, Amy. Alpine Planning Group is a comprehensive financial planning firm committed to improving your long-term financial success. It's a matter of trust. Investing is. They're prepared to earn yours. Call them today, 303-843-0918, 303-843-0918. Thank you, Amy.
You bet.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through Woodbury Financial Services, Inc., member FINRA SIPC and registered investment advisor. Alpine Planning Group and Woodbury Financial Services, Inc. are not affiliated entities. 14 West Dry Creek Circle, Littleton, Colorado, 80120.
Welcome back. It's George Brauchler on the George Show, 710 KNUS. We are halfway through the Monday morning show on this 10th of July. I am pleased to be joined by David Williams. He is the chairman of the Colorado GOP, busy as always, but carved out some time for us, and in fact has even told Billy, and David, I think this was a huge mistake, that you're willing to take some calls. Is that true?
It is. I'm happy to take some calls.
We'll do that after the first break, and I say that because I've got some things I was hoping to talk to you about, but I want to give you the opportunity first, almost like a state of the party kind of thing. Every time we get on the radio again, I'll just say, tell us what you think the news is that folks ought to be hearing about what's going on with the state party, and then we'll get into some questions.
Yeah, you bet. There's a lot of things that I could certainly share, but just to try to distill it down, we're making progress. One of the major events that happened was that our former vice chair, Priscilla, she stepped down so she could run for county commissioner, Doug Coe, and we wish her the best in that.
She announced it, by the way, right here on this show.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And
boom.
So, I hope we hope that she has a really good run, and she can succeed in whatever she pursues. But with that, we do have to hold a special election at the beginning of August, and we're taking in names. So far, there's about 5 people that have declared their intention.
Wow.
Yeah, very soon, a number of folks are going to really get into the thick of it. We're going to look at putting together a debate/forum for all these candidates so that all the members or anyone who's interested can learn what they're about. So that's a pretty big deal. And then along with that, we're looking at trying to entice presidential candidates to pay a little bit more attention to Colorado. So we're going to be changing our national delegate selection process.
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up. Talk about that, because I got that email, and I fancy myself kind of smart on this stuff, Dave, but there were parts of it where I'm like, I'm not sure what change we're making and the impact it has. Talk to us about that. This is the one called, it was called More of a Say.
Yeah, for sure. So I've been speaking with a number of the presidential campaigns and their representatives, and we've been looking at ways to make some modifications that would be a way to encourage these candidates to come to Colorado, because we're going to be a part of the Super Tuesday contest, and we certainly don't want to get lost in the mix of that. And what we wanted to convey to folks on those campaigns was that our delegates are going to be more of a premium than other delegates across the country. So one of the changes we're making, which the campaigns, as far as I'm aware of, are super okay with, is that we're going to require folks to be pledged. You're going to have to declare the candidates that you want to support. So no more unpledged delegates going into it if you want to pursue that role.
And when do you make that declaration? When do you pledge and get locked in?
Well, there's a specific time frame outlined in the bylaws. It's really two weeks, about somewhere around there, before the actual selection process of these delegates.
Okay.
So that's going to be sometime in spring when we hold our assemblies, congressional and state. And that's a big change. Another change is we're going to bind our delegates to 2 rounds of voting in Milwaukee at our national convention. So right now we bind them to 1 round. And we figured that if the presidential contest is going to somewhat be contentious on the floor in Milwaukee, then candidates are going to be really appreciative if we can have our delegates support them for more than just 1 round.
What happens if someone's like, listen, I was in for a round, but I've changed my mind. I'm now going to go for Trump or Ron or whatever it is. What can you do to force them into that position? Or do you relieve them and put an alternate in there? What does that look like?
That's a really good question. I will look into how to make sure that they stick with their 2 balloting rounds. But by and large, I think people are going to be committed, because they do have to sign a form. They do have to declare their intention. We'll make it clear that, hey, this is for 2 rounds, and the only way to get out of it is if a presidential candidate drops out of the race or otherwise becomes ineligible to continue on. So that's a big change. There's some other changes that are a little bit more minor, but still have a great impact. We're expanding the ability for campaigns and candidates to nominate delegates, and of course these delegates will be tied to the results of Super Tuesday, and we're going to be proportionally allocating these delegates. So if, for example, if a presidential campaign gets over 20% on primary night, they're going to get that same amount proportional with respect to our 37 delegates.
Some predictability, hopefully getting them involved in the process. Let me ask you about the money piece too. We talked about that last time. How are the finances looking? Is there a dollar amount that we have cash on hand that we can talk about?
Oh boy, cash on hand, I think we have roughly north of $50,000, but we did have a good round of fundraising the past 2 weeks. We've gotten commitments and pledges north of $100,000, and we have more. We have more meetings scheduled in the weeks ahead here, and we are in the process of, getting this operation off the ground. I'm treating it like a startup. No one right now is getting paid, as everyone knows, and that's very much deliberate.
Nobody's getting any paycheck at all. You're not taking a paycheck from this thing?
No.
Wow. What have you said? Have you set a threshold amount of we can't pay folks until we hit blank? What's the blank?
We are right now going to be talking to our executive committee on passing a budget. We're going to have our meeting this week to determine exactly what those details are going to encompass. But right now, it just doesn't feel right to be taking the seed capital we need. So we're gonna probably shoot for a couple $100,000, I'd say, rough that ballpark, before we start looking at who we're going to hire.
Do you have a goal in mind too for each quarter as you try to build up the finances heading into spending time on behalf of candidates and stuff? Do you have a goal like, look, by the end of 2023, I want to have blank in the bank?
Yeah. I mean, we would love to have, north of $500,000 to $750,000. By the time we get to 2024, I mean, collectively, we're, the whole cycle, we're looking to at least fundraise about $1.5 million so that we can have an adequate operation going into the election. So that's what we're looking at, and that's pretty much in line with what past administrations have done.
Let's talk about, too, some of the other things that have been in the news for water cooler talk, for lack of a better term. Kyle Clark highlighted, by the way, no friend of conservatives, but he highlighted an email that the party sent out during Pride Month, and it was this email that had an image that you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you haven't seen it, it just says Pride Month, and it ends up highlighting through multicolored stuff the DE at the end of Pride and MON at the front of month, so it looks like it says demon and all this other stuff. And then, of course, 9 News, predictably, I think, gave their own editorial view of what that all means. Talk to us about that quote-unquote controversy. What was intended there, and do you think that it helps or hurts?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it definitely got the email open. No question about that.
Yeah, that's true.
We certainly, and we said this on social media, and anyone that's asked, we certainly make no apologies over what we were trying to talk about. Ultimately, there is a radical, group of folks embedded in the LGBTQ community that are trying to come after our children. If you look at Pride events, all over the country, especially where they captured video in New York, where you had them chanting, "We're coming for your children." We take
That's
them
what they're
at their
saying
word.
at these things?
Yeah.
How much of this do you think is LGB? I'm trying to stop at whatever that other letter is, the T thing. How much of it is that versus do you think this kind of new emphasis on drag queens and transsexuals and all this other stuff? How much can you separate the two, or is it everybody's in it for the same outcome, and that's to get the kids?
Oh no, not at all. There are a number of folks within that community that don't agree with what's being pushed right now. I mean, there's a great organization called Gays Against Groomers. There's another Twitter account that I encourage everyone to take a look at. It's called the Gay Republican. There are great folks within that community that don't want to go down the road that these people are going down. When you have Pride organizers and Pride events who are, highlighting drag performances that are of a sexual pornographic nature in front of children, it begs the question, what's the goal here? And I think ultimately the goal is to encourage these kids to be confused about who they are sexually or even who they are biologically, but ultimately normalize normalize pedophilia.
And is that when you say, hey, they're coming for the kids, or at least we're trying to interpret what they're saying when they're saying that's what their goal is?
That's the interpretation that is, I think, left ultimately if you take it to its logical conclusion. When you have these individuals who are these grown men who are nearly naked, twerking and dancing in front of children and encouraging them to question their genders, I don't know how else to describe it. I don't know what other logical conclusion or end that you take it to. And we're certainly going to call it out every time.
And was that the purpose of the email, was to highlight, hey, look, here's where the Colorado GOP is on this issue?
Yeah, for sure. We wanted to highlight where we are, and we wanted to let people know we're going to pursue meaningful policy change. In the state of Colorado, it should be illegal for anyone to try and force children to take these chemical altering medications that are irreversible. You know, if you want to become a different or identify as a different sex than you were born with when you're an adult, 18 years or older, knock yourself out. But let's leave the children alone. We don't need to be, letting them even think about this stuff. Let kids be kids. Ultimately,
there have been states that have already gotten further down the road than we have, obviously, for obvious reasons, with some legislation. Is there a state law out there that you look to right now that you say, that's the kind of thing we want to do here?
Yeah, we're looking into that right now. I think Florida and I believe Tennessee, they're well way ahead of us, obviously, because they're Republican states, and I think they're trying to actually do something unlike the Democrats here in Colorado. But yeah, there's a couple of states around the country that we're looking at, but we want to make sure that we craft something that is appropriate for Colorado and in line with our values.
We're talking with Dave Williams. He's the chair of the state GOP. Here's what I want to do, Dave, because I know you have limited time, but I told folks I would let them ask questions. Here's what I'd like to do is let's cut away for a break, come back, and there's a caller on the line already who wants to ask a question. Those lines are open at 303-696-1971, and then we've got some text questions that have come in, and we're just going to go, man, boom, 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 and you answer, and then when you say you got to go, we'll let you go, and we'll get on with our day.
Okay, sounds great.
Hey, thanks, sir. Stick around. That's Dave Williams. He is going to take questions, which I love, man. I love the guests that are willing and have the time and the ability to take questions, because even though I think I know what's on your mind and what's relevant, I'm not always sure of that. So give us a call at 303-696-1971, or you can shoot us the text. We'll check those as well. Stick around. It's George Brauchler on The George Show, 710 KNUS.
Want to take your favorite radio station wherever you go? Well, now there's an app for that. No matter where you are, stream your favorite shows. Tap the app to listen to podcasts. Talk back to your favorite local hosts.
At the tone, leave a message.
Call the show. Set your alarm. Enter contests and win prizes. All in the palm of your hand. Available now for iOS and Android devices in the App Store or Google Play. And best of all, it's free. Download today.
George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS, bringing back up David Williams. Billy, maybe you should bring up Dave because we've got so many buttons here. I'm bound to cut someone off, and I don't want to do that as we get into the questions, and there have been a bunch in here that have come in. Let's go. All right, I use the right side. Let's go to, by the way, Dave, thanks for staying with us. Dave Williams, chairman of the state GOP party. Thanks for sticking around for a bit.
You bet.
Let's go to Jay. Jay has patiently been on hold for what I believe is 7 hours. Jay, you have a question for Chairman Williams.
I do, yes. Longtime Republican Party member, Republican 500 since I was 19 years old. How do we make the biggest impact to get people involved with, let's just say, the conservative movement? It's obviously not a letter writing campaign or a email campaign, but rallies, concerts, publicly, just like the Trump rallies, really do make an impact when you see 30 or 40,000 people show up to a Trump rally like it did in Las Vegas. More than that in Las Vegas, but that usually happens. So that's the first question for you: is how do we make an impact to get people involved and not get sliced up with how many months of a pregnancy, which Roe versus Wade really killed the last election, even though I don't believe the last election was legal. It was a big deal.
Talking about Dobbs. Jay, thank you so much for your patience and the question. Dave, what do you think?
Sure. Well, I mean, there's a lot to unpack in that question, but I think if I were to bring it down to its basic elements, I think we have to give something to voters that they can believe in. We not only have to call out Democrats for being out of touch and corrupt, but we also have to tell them, what are we going to pursue? What are we going to pass? How are we going to serve them? And that starts with figuring out what the marketplace wants. But I think for a long time, there's been folks in our party who've tried to impose what they think the voters should care about and talk about. And instead, what we should be doing is asking them what they want and address those issues. And then lastly, we need to make sure that we have a good operation, with our party and even ancillary organizations that help in the effort of electing Republicans. We need, donors and voters to know that their time, energy, and resources are being used wisely and that no one's enriching themselves. In short, we need people to start trusting us again, and I think that starts with being transparent and honest and clear that we want to serve them, not ourselves.
Couple questions. One we'll do a couple from the text, and we'll go to Gary and the other callers at 303-696-1971. One question was, if the GOP opts out of the primary, will you run for CD5, which is currently occupied by Doug Lamborn?
Well, currently right now, the bylaws prohibit me from actually running for anything in a contested primary. So I have no plans to challenge Doug Lamborn.
No, but you could. If we opted out, you could bail. You could do what Priscilla did and drop out and end up running. Would you do that? Would you consider doing that? Or are you I'm in this for the long haul?
No, I'm not going to. I made a commitment to run the Republican Party. I'm not going to resign. It needs to be brought to a place where we can compete, and that's my goal.
The effort regarding that opting out involves a lawsuit. Maybe before we get to Gary, you could update us on the status of that. And one of the text questions was, does John Eastman play a role at all in that lawsuit, or will he?
Right. So right now, I think we've raised. And again, this is being overseen by a separate committee. So Kevin Lundberg is our chair of it, so he would have a clear idea. But I think we're at about $15,000 to $20,000 raised so far through small dollar donations. They're working on getting major donors to put in. I'm not sure where they're at on that. But right now, we have all the elements in place. We're just trying to hit a certain threshold. With respect to John Eastman, he's the person that's authored the brief that we would like to file, but given his current situation, we're kind of waiting to see ultimately what happens. If he's unable to continue because of, if he's disbarred or anything like that, there is another attorney that he works with that would step in.
But if he's not disbarred and you had the funds, you would bring John on to lead the charge, or at least be part of that argument?
Yeah, that's what the committee wants, and they did tackle this issue the first go around, and that's the direction we're comfortable going with, is just given the experience.
Somebody texted in and said that they had received a voicemail from, I can't remember the county. I want to say it was like Fremont County. And I don't know if I think they're part of the party, but someone from Fremont County on behalf of the state party, a voicemail that said, hey, we're going to have a vote in September, whenever the next big meeting is, encouraging folks to vote to opt out of the primary. Are you aware of that? And am I I didn't hear it. So am I characterizing it correctly?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with it. I do know there are groups that are, working towards that end, but no official communications have gone out through the party.
Does the party have a position on whether or not they should opt out of the primary?
No, not at this time. We are going to have a committee hearing with the bylaws committee to kind of go over what changes could be proposed in the event that we do opt out. But ultimately, we're leaving that up to the central committee.
Let's go back to the phone lines here. Gary, you're on 710 with Dave Williams from the state GOP. What's your question?
Well, for many years, I was very generous with the Republicans until Red Wind came along. And like 3 years ago, before the 2020 election, I was getting 50 to 70 text messages or emails a day. And the only person I could vote for was Trump. The others were all out of state. Once a month, I'd get one from Ken Buck, which is okay, but I don't think Win Red is a friend of the Republicans.
So what's your question?
My question is, are the Republicans, do they really want to bombard me? Right. I'm still getting 20 text messages a day asking for money, and I don't like it.
What would you prefer? What would you prefer?
Once a month.
Once a month.
I mean, 20 text messages, and before the presidential election, getting 50 to 70.
That's a lot, man. That's a lot.
Yeah, what do they think?
Gary, Gary, let's give Dave a chance to answer that one. Thank you for the question. I think you've made a great point there. I get that, too. I get inundated with some of those things as well. Any thoughts on that, Dave?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, WinRed, if those of you don't know, WinRed is sort of the answer to Act Blue, the Democrats' platform. And the WinRed was set up well before I was involved, and I believe probably well before Christie or even Ken Buck were involved as our party chairs. So I'm not sure what it would look like to undo any of that stuff. But right now we're emphasizing our donations through Antidote and through physical, cash transactions or check, transactions that comply with the law. So that's where we're at right now. But I can look into trying to cut down on that stuff. But once you're in that system, I don't know if there's anything I can do.
You're stuck. Yeah. You get stuck. Another text question in here. Hold on here. I've just, of course, clicked on it and just missed this thing. Another text question on the Chuck Bonniwell has proposed, and I read this in the Colorado Sun. Chuck Bonniwell has proposed a bylaw change saying that if someone who's part of the voting committee on opting out does not, does not show up for the vote, their vote will be treated as a vote in favor. First, am I characterizing that right? And two, what do you think about that?
Yeah, that's a correct characterization, Chuck. Right before the call went out for our special meeting, we needed 30 days to propose bylaw amendments. He sponsors this amendment, puts it on my desk. I give him a call just so that I could clearly understand what he wants to attempt here. And I offer it in the call because it's his right to offer amendments like anyone else on our committee. And I think, let me say this. First, the party nor me have any official position on this because I'm still trying to digest it, and all the other amendments we've put through the committee, for their review, which they've recommended to pass. But this one still needs to go through the committee. So to be determined. But I do think it's clever. I think the fact that
clever, but do you support the idea of I'll give you an example at the state level. You and I both know now that we are automatically opted into paying for everybody else's state park permit through this scheme that the Democrats put in place that says unless you show up to the DMV and say, hey, I don't want to pay for this, you and I get billed. That's garbage, man, right? Like, I don't think that that's the right way to do stuff. This feels like that. Like, hey, if you don't show up, then you just agree with what we've proposed. And I haven't read through the whole thing, but it strikes me as not Republican.
Well, I think we got to look at it within the context of what we're talking about here. Let's be clear. The opt-out it's not a real solution. I know that Ken Theory and some of the others who proposed, the open primary and then threw this in so that they could, point to it as a way to say you still have your freedom of association, right?
75%'s a ton, man. That's a ton.
Yeah, 75% of a total membership. It's not even, members present. I think given that context, this is worthy of debate and discussion. The bylaw contemplates, if it were to pass, that you would have sufficient notice to make arrangements to show up and declaratively vote no, or at least have a proxy vote no. Given the unusual circumstance of the opt-out provision, which it's not really a choice, I think this at least makes the impossible a bit more possible right now.
But why not presume that the status quo is what is predicted, right? Like if you don't show up to the committee, why don't you presume, well, they must be opposed to it, because if they cared about it, they'd show up.
Well, I think the presumption generally should be it's an either yes or no. That should really be the presumption, but given the threshold criteria, it certainly changes the discussion. And I ultimately think that if it's a good idea, 2/3 of the Central Committee will have to pass it, and if it's not, it'll certainly be a non-issue come September.
And are you agnostic on that, even through? I mean, up until the vote, or do you ever come out and say I like it, I don't like it?
Well, I mean, I will have a position at some point during the process. Again, we got to put it through the committee, and the committee's got to vote yes or no on whether or not they want to recommend it. And I'll have a position at that time. But this was literally dropped in my lap, the day I sent the notice out, and I'm still weighing through it. What's the right way to go about this? And there is something to be said. Like if you're part of the Central Committee, you need to show up. You need to vote. So I'm not saying that this is totally out of the question, just given the unique circumstance of it.
But again, this is all Chuck came up with this idea. This wasn't anything from you guys, the state party. You were just given this by Chuck.
This is the Bonnewell Amendment for sure.
Yeah, and Chuck's a pretty smart guy, man. He's a smart attorney. Last question. If we end up going down that road, we adopt the Chuck Bonnewell rule, and the party then, based on that, ends up opting out, does 2024 see Republican candidates that are produced only by the assemblies at the county and state and jurisdiction level, or will there be some other primary that the Republicans put together?
We're working on an alternative plan. There is a committee that I did create because we have to have the vote. It only made sense, especially based on what happened 2 years ago. What are we opting, out of, and what are we getting ourselves into? And so I said, come up with a plan, because 2 years ago the voters did not want nominations, solely through the assembly process. So that's to be determined, but obviously a big portion of how we nominate our candidates is going to involve the assemblies, and that's kind of what I know.
Dave, I could go all day with you, but you've been so generous with your time. You've even given us a few more minutes than you said you had time for, so I want to thank you again. We'll have you back on. I think it's in the next 3 or 4 weeks, but I love that you keep coming on so we can keep having these conversations as we hopefully work our way into a position of regaining some prominence in the state.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Dave. That's Dave Williams. He is the state party chair for the GOP. Listen, your reaction to this and the conversations that we had and other questions, I just couldn't get to everybody's. There's text things that have come in. I just couldn't get to everybody's. You can tell Dave's totally willing to answer the questions, even if you don't like the answers. And I appreciate that, man. I mean, we just need more of that across the ideological spectrum, and some folks just won't do it. Like Phil Weiser, for instance. Dude won't come on air here. And I guess using the old Pete Boyle's adage, if you knew where you were going to die, you'd never go there. But that's not my goal in getting Phil on here. I really do just want to ask him straight up questions, but they're going to be viewed as hard because they're factual in basis. And I know that's tough for him because it's not a platitude format. But I appreciate Dave doing that. What did you hear? What other questions would you have asked? And are we on the right track with this? 303-696-1971. Can't cut away till I tell you, though, about Gay Ribble and Empower Home Team for real estate. And here's why that's important. Like I told you, I keep my finger on the pulse of the real estate thing just because I'm so interested in it. And what's very, very fascinating to me is that even though we've had 10 interest rate hikes over the past year, which sucks if you're interested in refinancing your house or buying a new one, and maybe even selling it because it should cause this cooling off. Here's the deal. If you're looking at buying a house, the housing prices have not come down very much compared to the interest rates. Why is that? That is a fascinating thing. And it really depends on whether you're buying a home that's north of Billy Thorpe money, like $1 million, or you're buying like a regular human being home under $1 million. There's a difference there too. You don't have to figure out the why. You don't have to figure out the when is it going to be better. All you have to do is pick up the phone and dial 833-301-SOLD because that's Gay's number. That's the Empower Home Team, 833-301-SOLD. And yes, you get all the other benefits of going with someone who's been in this business for decades, grew up here, started a family here, started a business here. You get all that stuff. But you also get all the other statistical things that are provable, like they sell for about $31,000 on average more than other realtors. They sell twice as fast on average as other realtors. You get all the other benefits, all the other free resources they make available, the workshops and everything. But you also get someone that can take the stress out of the most stressful situation you can imagine, and that is getting out of the biggest investment of your life and getting into the next biggest investment of your life. You can reach her at gayhasthebuyers.com. That's gay, G-A-Y-E, hasthebuyers.com, or call at 833-301-SOLD. When we come back, you, me, the text, 303-696-1971, George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. My great thanks to Dave Williams. He's the chair of the state GOP party. Man, he gave us a lot of time, and my hope is we keep that conversation ongoing in those every month sort of appearances that have really covered us since we took over the show, whether it was KBB before, Dave Williams, or whoever comes afterwards. That's, by the way, presuming they allow Billy and I to remain on air for another 3 or 4 weeks. We just want to keep those conversations going. What did you hear? And are you in agreement with the things that you heard? I will tell you, I've looked at the Colorado Sun article. I'm going to direct you to it. You don't have to take my word for how it's described. But there, as you know, there have been great efforts to want to opt the GOP out of this primary system that has unaffiliated voters. I've told you before, I don't want unaffiliated voters picking Republican nominees. I want Republicans picking Republican nominees. But we lost that battle, right? That happened. That part of the Constitution got amended. It ain't going to be changed anytime soon. In fact, even if you put something on the ballot, I don't think it would be changed. When you have 47% of the voting electorate registered as unaffiliated, they're not going to vote to take away their ability to have influence over the primary. So the only road to this would be what Dave described, and that is having an internal vote of the state party that has 75% of its membership. And that's an important distinction. Not 75% of those attending the meeting to vote, 75% of the membership to vote to opt out of the primary. And so that's a problem, right? They initially went to the court, they being the party Interior, and said, well, we want to sue over the 75% is a de facto ban on being able to opt out. It's mythical. It's fake. And so they went to the court, and the court said, no, we disagree with you. So at least thus far, it has. So there hasn't been any success. I know they want to continue to sue on this idea. And frankly, I don't mind at all the idea that we test this in the courts. In part because whatever the court says would be binding on both parties. I think it would be blowing our foot off to opt out and allow the Democrats to have basically that unfettered access to inviting the unaffiliated to participate in a selection of their nominees because, and studies show this isn't me saying it, this is like those people that do this kind of study work say that once you've committed to a candidate in the primary, you are like a trillion times more likely to stick with them through the general. We just don't want to cede the battlefield that way. So one of the things that has come up is this Chuck Bonniwell approach, according to this Colorado Sun article. And it's a Colorado Sun article that was written by Jesse Paul and Sandra Fish. I think we've even had Jesse on the radio at one point here. And this would basically say, if you don't show up to the meeting, you will be presumed to have supported the motion to opt out. And I asked Dave about that. He said, hey, I want to look into this. I want to, get to know more about the policy and blah, blah, blah. But he also said, yeah, I'd typically say that, hey, the presuming someone voted one way or the other based on their non-appearance is bad form. But because they've set this, and again, that felt a little Machiavellian to me. It's like, yes, normally I would subscribe to the principle that no one can dictate the outcome of a thing based on your silence. However, in this case, because that tells me it's outcome driven, right? Like this is finding an outcome and working backwards. That's not us. First off, that's not America. It shouldn't be America. It's not conservative. Conservative is process driven. We think we get to the right result because we have the right process. We don't pick a result and work backwards. And that's what this thing sort of feels to me like. Like we're saying, well, what can we do to defeat it? Hey, if it means presuming everybody that's not in attendance is voting in favor of the change. And that's the part that just fundamentally doesn't make sense to me. Like if you knew your HOA was going to hold a meeting that said, hey, we want to change our HOA rules to allow multifamily dwellings inside each house, like built right next to your house. And we need a vote to change that. If you thought that not voting for it was presumed by your non-appearance, you just wouldn't show up, right? Like that's the status quo. You're in essence voting for the status quo by not showing up to vote. That's why you have that membership rule, and that's the total membership rule. So this kind of turns it on its head, and the example I gave of the state park permit thing is legit. That is something that is so anti-consumer, let alone anti-voter, and that is to presume that you want something unless you say you don't want it. What other part of the democratic process do we do that? And maybe there is one, and I just haven't thought of it. But where else do we say, we presume you want this unless you tell us you don't? That's just not how it works. You have to make an affirmative selection one way or the other, or we just presume you're down with the status quo because you're not voting to change it. That feels like what we should be doing here. So if the rule is, you know what I've just noticed here? Holy crap, Billy. We're actually quoted here in this article. Son of a gun. He said, this is a quote, "I really want all Republicans to vote in the primary. I just don't want another primary in which Democrats go unaffiliated and unaffiliateds dominate the election. I believe in the caucus system, but there are too limited a number of people to go there." Former State Senator Kevin Lundberg wrote in a recent email letter to supporters. He's spearheading the potential legal challenge on behalf of the party, with John Eastman expected to be a part of the lawsuit, Williams told conservative talk show host George Brauchler. Well, thank you so much, man, for quoting us on that Big Daddy right there. That is true, and we just heard it again. By the way, I'm sure Eastman's smarter than I am. I'm sure the guy has way more education and way more experience. But Billy, correct me if I'm wrong here, isn't that the guy that advanced the notion that Mike Pence could simply derail the entire election by refusing to certify the House of...
Yeah, and helped put forward things like fake electors. And that was part of that strategy as well. Yeah.
Maybe that's a one-off, and otherwise this dude's a genius. But that, to me, is questionable, man. I mean, if the guy that wanted to date your daughter showed up and the first thing you find out is that this guy has a couple DUIs in his past, you might say, hey, you guys can meet somewhere, but I don't want my daughter driving with you. This feels like the legal equivalent of that. When you've advanced a couple arguments like that turn out to be just wrong and not even close, call wrong, I don't know, man, but I'm sure he's smarter than I am. I'm sure he'll do a wonderful job for the party, but yikes. Listen, that's going to do it for this hour of the show, but I want to continue this conversation with you. We've got some other topics we want to talk about too, but are we on the right path? Is what you're hearing here the right way to go? And I'll keep revisiting this with you until the state makes a decision, the state party makes a decision. But one, should we be opting out of the primary and resorting to just the assembly? But two, do you support a rule that says if you don't show up, we will presume you are in support of the proposed change? I got to know what you think about that, especially if you're a Republican. Is it about the outcome or the process? 303-696-1971. My name's George. It's the George Brauchler Show. You're listening to us right here on the super mighty, super powerful Megawatt 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here. Final hour of the George Show on 710 KNUS. Last hour, we were having conversations by phone and by text with each other, but also with Dave Williams, the GOP chair. And that is on a lot of different issues. One was the issue of the email that went out that I think 9 News had jumped all over, and some other outlets did too. And that is this idea of the Pride Month. If you take the two words and you put together, what was interesting, and Dave may know this, I didn't even get a chance to ask him, was that pictogram there, or whatever that is, that meme that had Pride and month, and then it was all multicolored, like Roy G. Biv'd out for DE and MON to say demon. That was actually something that was created by an LGBTQ artist, and it was to try to take back some other anti-LGBTQ person that had put the pride and the month together to spell demon. And it's just interesting to me that has become an issue. I didn't get a chance to really talk to Dave a ton about if he thinks this is going to advance the ball for us statewide. I understand with the grassroots of the party, but I don't have a sense yet if emphasizing that, if the social issues are going to be the difference maker for us in this election. I just don't know yet. I mean, I have my own concerns about the direction of the country, certainly on a social level. But is that what's going to dictate the outcome of this? So much of this upcoming election, at least at the national level, appears to me to be personality-driven and a commentary on the ineptitude of, in terms of the border and the economy and drugs and war in Ukraine and all these things that aren't social issues. I just wonder if the social issue ground, especially here in Colorado, is one that's fertile for victory. I don't know. The other part, though, and I've been reading more about this during the break, is this issue of opting out of the primary. And one of the things that happened was Chuck Bonniwell had proposed an amendment that he's going to have the state central committee vote on. He needs, I think, 2/3 of the vote in September. But it would create a special convention that allows every single registered Republican to vote on who should be the party's general election candidate. I'd like to have every single registered Republican be eligible to vote in that. But the path to opting out of the primary is one in which if you don't, it looks like if you don't show up, then you're presumed to support opting out of the primary. I just don't know how we get there from here. I have my concerns, man. And first off, I am heartened to hear that they think they have about $50,000 now in the bank. I don't know what public reporting there needs to be of that, and that's cash on hand when I say in the bank. I think that's great. I think the idea, though, that we want to have $500,000, $750,000 before we exit 2023 is laudable and necessary. How are we going to get there? I mean, if we're at 50 now, how are we going to increase that by 15-fold by the end of the year? This could be a bigger issue than we know right now, especially if what we're going to end up doing is committing $25,000 to $50,000 of that to the legal effort, perhaps involving John Eastman, into overturning this primary system that we have, this open primary system that we have right now. I want to have this conversation with you, but there's a whole bunch of texts that have come in here. One was a link to a Colorado Politics article where it was just in March, so just a few months ago, where Dave makes it pretty clear he's all about withdrawing from the open primary that we have. Again, I asked him this. Do we go to an assembly-only nominating process? If we do that, I don't think that's the path to victory for us. As much as I'm a grassroots guy and I have only made it to the ballot through the assembly process, every time I've made it onto the ballot when I've run has always been through the assembly, and I attend. I still go to these. If that's the only vehicle to do it, that is a very, very loud but teeny tiny voice within the Republican Party who will be making a decision about our standard bearers for a statewide race or maybe a congressional race. I'm not sure if that's the only route we should have. I think we ought to have an open debate amongst Republicans about this that is larger than just the number of people that show up to a county assembly or a state assembly. But what do I know? It sounds like Dave's on board with the idea of exploring a possibility that would allow us to vote. But how do you do that? I mean, if you disconnect from the state. If you opt out, who pays for your primary? We do. Republicans do. We pay for the primary. Where are we getting the money for that? Are we going to say, hey, if you pay us $5, you can vote? Is that we're going to do a poll tax for party primary? Hope not. Where else is that money coming from? And for those of you that think, well, hey, once we get our house in order and we're all purified up and everything, the money's just going to flow in, from where? Who's sitting on their money right now until that happens? I don't know of anybody like that. I know of people that continue to give because they want to see us win. But what do I know? 303-696-1971. Let's go to the phone lines. Dave from Denver, you're on 710. What do you think?
Hi, George. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I suggest everyone, I think the world of Dick Wadhams. You wrote a very good op-ed piece, and I don't know if you saw it, about 10 days ago.
I did. And was it 10 days ago already? I saw a piece.
Well, I don't know when, but
I saw the piece. I saw the piece that Dick ran that was very critical of Dave and likened him to that other dude who tried to derail Bill Owens' game. That's it, Steve Curtis. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I think Dick was one of our finest chairs, and I'm no fan of Dave Williams. I'm sure he's a nice guy, but it's not where we should be headed for the state GOP, I don't think.
What do you are you someone that would want to see just Republicans voting for Republican nominees? Do you support the idea of having an open primary? And then I'd love to hear your opinion too on this opt-out, opt-in thing for whatever changes we might make.
I don't know. I haven't followed that issue. I just want to see us have wins. And we've only had, 2 governors in the last...
Well, we've had one Republican governor in half a century, so that's about it.
Yeah.
One Republican governor.
That's a terrible record.
Let me ask you this, though. What do you say to those who say, yeah, we want wins too, and whatever we've been doing up to this point ain't working, so why not try this?
Yeah, I think it's going further off the edge of a cliff,
What is there a change that you would want to see made that you think that would make us more competitive?
Well, to get wins, we're going to have to go to the unaffiliates because they're the biggest force in the state now, are they not?
Well, they're the largest voting group, I guess.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call them a block because they all don't vote the same way, but 47% of registered voting Coloradans are unaffiliated. They just don't want to wear the jersey.
Yeah.
So,
and that's where your votes are.
I agree with you, but and let me ask you the question then that I know that some folks would be asking sitting by their radios not calling in, and they should, 303-696-1971, and that is they're saying that, listen, if all we do is play to the unaffiliated or our perception of them, all we do is continue to be squishier and squishier and look more like the Dems, and we can't win that way. What we really need to do is to give them a stark contrast by standing up for our principles, and then the unaffiliated will turn out and they will vote for us.
Well, yeah, I agree, but that's where towards the middle is more where the votes are, I think. And I don't think Dave is taking us in that direction.
Well, I'm interested, and Dave, thank you for the phone call, man. I appreciate it. I am concerned. I'm just concerned, and we didn't get into it again this time around because we talked about it the last time Dave was on, but there have definitely been some emails and efforts on behalf of the party to weigh in a critical way against certain Republicans, including the state GOP coming out against Doug Lamborn on something that Doug did with a vote. Now, you can disagree with what Doug did, but it feels a bit like the state GOP, chaired by the guy who lost to Doug in the primary, might want to take a knee on that issue if he's there. That just feels like a bit of a conflict of interest. But I do appreciate and respect that Dave said, no matter what we do at the primary or assembly process, I am not running against Doug Lamborn. I am going to remain the state GOP chair. I appreciate that. I really do. I think that makes a lot of sense. The other part of this, though, that I just can't wrap my mind around is this notion that the ends justify the means. That what we need to do is to set up a system where we can defeat the 75% rule that's baked into this opting out of the open primary in order to accomplish some other alternative. I'm not down with that. And if your thought is, well, they've set us up with this impossible hurdle and it's so unfair that the only way we can answer it is to be unfair, you lose me. You've got to convince me some other way. Convince me that this is okay and this is the right thing to do. But the way it's been described, at least in this Colorado Sun article, and I haven't seen the drafted rule, you're going to have to convince me that this is the right thing to do. If it's the expressed will of the Republican voters, the Republican Party, I'm all in. I'll support you. But this isn't the expressed will. This is a rule that is designed to say we're going to presume you're in favor unless you make time in your day to drive out to, some place in Bonkersville, Egypt, Colorado on some day that we set up this thing. That's not most Republicans. That's the other thing. The grassroots, these are the most committed, most dedicated, most hardcore people. That's what makes them special to the party, and they have an outsized influence for a reason. But if you think for a moment that most of the Republican voters or voters that might vote for a Republican candidate have the ability to just take off time to go do this, I'll be honest, if we had set up a state central committee thing that I was a part of yesterday, you're not going to see me there. Any free time I had, I'm driving up to Louisville to go watch my son play baseball. On some other weekend, it might be going to some fencing tournament for Jeff or going up to CSU to see Trey. This idea that if you care enough, your vote should matter more than all those others when it comes to the Republican thing, there's some credibility with that. But I got to tell you, man, 3,700 people filled up that state assembly. 3,700 people out of 5-point-something million Coloradans, and 27% of them are registered Republicans. That's it? 3,700? That can't be the right answer. Here's some text. I'm a Republican. I honestly don't know what the party is thinking. They just have no direction, no guidance, and we are just a mess. This could be the easiest election to win in the history of elections, and the GOP is going to screw it up. I hope you're wrong. And I don't think that the party's directionless. I don't believe that. It's just, do you agree with the direction that they're going? It feels like it is a direction that is more along the lines of we're looking for more purity. We're looking for less people having input on our nominees. And in doing that, we will be more attractive to the other people we've excluded from the process. And if that sounds like I'm biased in the way I'm describing it, tell me where I'm factually wrong there. Here's another one. Dems are already seeing the hesitancy of moderates to vote D, so they're going to build left-leaning non-Dem affiliates in local races. Well, that's interesting. What in the world? Are you talking about like running some sort of a shadow third-party candidate or something like that, Texter, that you're thinking that they're going to try to invent someone to chisel away at the Republican support? Interesting. 303-696-1971 is the number. Jones says, Dick is obsolete. No one under 40 think he is too old Biden. I'm not sure, Joan, what you're saying there. The unaffiliated will vote their pocketbooks. Maybe. But, Joan, what we know from the last election is they will absolutely vote Dobbs, too. The Democrats didn't roll over us in 2022 because they won every Democrat vote. That is not how it happened. So, yeah, they'll vote pocketbooks. But to suggest that they are somehow disinterested in the social issues, I think that's provably false based on what happened in 2022 out here in Colorado. Unaffiliateds are just that. They're not affiliated with the party. It doesn't mean they aren't political. It doesn't mean they aren't even partisan in the way that they show up and vote. They just don't want to officially wear the jersey. So pocketbooks, maybe. And that should be a concern for us because while the economy is teetering on something, I'm not sure what it is, we still haven't slipped into that recession that everyone's talked about coming there. You know, we talked a little bit with Alpine about the spread between the two-year and 10-year note returns and that being an indicator of a possible recession. We just haven't seen it yet. So I don't know, man. I mean, Biden is emboldened enough now that he's talking about the Biden economy, which is ridiculous, right? There's no Biden economy out here. Anything that's happening that isn't completely negative is in part flukish. And that's my sense, is unintended based on what the Fed's doing. Someone else texted in. This is a guy, I think this is a reference to Dave. This is a guy who wanted Tina Peters to have an official role. The end justifies the means with Dave. I know the ends for Dave are he wants the GOP to be back in a position of prominence and influence in government. I believe that it will remain to be seen what he does in what he supports in this as to whether he is Machiavellian on this or if he's still interested in the process at all. Another text, Napoleon quoted, "Never interrupt your enemy while they're making a mistake." Republicans can't help but shoot themselves in the foot by participating in the culture wars. Debate with charm and knowledge, not anger and entitlement. Oh, that's interesting. I do think there's a role for the social issues in this and all these campaigns. I don't think we can just shrug it off. But if that's the centerpiece of why people should vote for us, I just, in Colorado, and I don't know the rest of the country the way I know Colorado. How do you win Colorado that way? That may be great. And by the way, this Colorado Sun article has a fantastic picture at the very top of it of some great, great people from Elbert County at the state assembly. They had a front row seat to this thing. And you've got Commissioner Chris Richardson there. You've got super GOP chair Tom Peterson, and really a great group of folks. But that would work with Elbert County and Lincoln and Douglas and probably El Paso. But where else are we winning with the social issue message? I just don't know. Another text has come in. Wadham's a very nice man, but he's not a fighter or a scrapper willing to mix it up on the tough fights, and it reflects itself in the Colorado Republican Party. They're soft. First off, I don't think Dick can be blamed for anything to do with the state GOP party over the last several cycles. The guy hasn't been the chair for a long, long time. But I disagree with the idea that he's not a fighter. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of a guy named Thune, Senator Thune. It seems like kind of a big deal out of that whole South Dakota thing. Ended up upending the Senate Majority Leader at the time. That doesn't happen by accident. That happens with fighting. Who ran that campaign, John? Oh, that's right. It was Dick Wadhams. And then Governor Owens, if you recall, he barely won that first state election against Gail Shetler. You don't barely win in this state as a Republican, be the only Republican governor in the last 50 years, unless you're a fighter. The guy just isn't animated and say the acerbic things in that super extreme dramatic way, the way some folks do. And so if some folks look at that and say, well, that's a fighter, Dick's not that way. Dude's just far more thoughtful and chessboardy than that. And so you can disagree with Dick. I happen to like Dick Wadhams quite a bit, and I think that he has a lot to offer by way of perspective. And it's not the only perspective, but if you think that you can write this guy off because he doesn't sing the tune that you like, you are mistaking your views for Colorado's views. I talked to Billy about this off air. My worry is we are rapidly approaching a point on both sides of the ideological spectrum where we're convinced that everybody agrees with us. And if they don't, if we don't win elections, it's either because the system is rigged against us or there was outright cheating. I mean, even Brian from Arvada, who I love Brian when he calls in, even he was like, well, we're not doing well on the abortion issue because we just need to keep educating people. You really think that's it? You think it's that people would change their mind if they just knew more? I think some people, it's just baked into they know what they think. Abortion isn't one of those issues where you're like, well, I could be convinced to go this way. It's not like that. You know what you think on abortion, right? Like nobody's going to convince you like, well, I was pro-life, but now I'm pro-choice. It's not about educating people. It's about crafting a policy that will win over the majority of voters. And for Colorado, that is not now, and my guess is nor will it ever be, a straight pro-life start to stop. It's just never going to be that way. Unfortunately, because of who we've allowed to be in power under the Gold Dome, it is much more the opposite. We are much closer to kill any baby you want all the way up through 5th grade or something like that. I mean, that's the problem that we're in right now. It's not that we can't win the argument. We just haven't crafted one that wins over 50% of the electorate, and it's not because they're not educated on it. Billy has just screamed in my ear that we have to cut away for a break, but I refuse to do that. Because until I tell you about QC Kinetics, you're going to miss out on the opportunity to live a pain-free life by calling up these wizards. And these are healthcare folks, local healthcare folks at 303-900-8986. I'll tell you that number a couple more times. And ask them, hey, what's this about? I understand that you guys have the ability to address the pain I have in my joints, my knees, my hip, my back, shoulders. How do you do it? And what they're not going to tell you is, we cut you open. That's what the other guys say. That's what the orthopedic surgeons say and the other doctors out there. These are the guys that say, we'll use you to help cure you. That's called regenerative medicine. And wouldn't you rather live a pain-free existence through a needle with no downtime than a scalpel with a whole bunch of rehabilitation and don't have weight bearing on this and make sure you don't shower like that? Don't do that. Go down the road that makes the most amount of sense, or at least arm yourself with the information to make a better decision. So if you decide to go with the scalpel and later on you're like, this was miserable, I should have listened to Brauchler, you've now at least got that information. QCkinetics.com is the website. QC Kinetics begins with a K, ends with an X.com. But I'd give them a call at 303-900-8986, 303-900-8986. Going to cut away for a break, come back to the texts that are coming in. We'll take your calls as well. It's George Brauchler on The George Show, 303-696-1971 for 710 KNUS.
Want to take your favorite radio station wherever you go? Well, now there's an app for that. No matter where you are, stream your favorite shows. Tap the app to listen to podcasts. Talk back to your favorite local hosts.
At the tone, leave a message.
Call the show. Set your alarm. Enter contests and win prizes, all in the palm of your hand. Available now for iOS and Android devices in the App Store or Google Play. And best of all, it's free. Download today.
George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS, our number 303-696-1971. Our buddy Joan here, listen, texts in and says, I believe in the direction, I presume that means of the party leadership. If you're not coming to the vote and instead going to another event, something is losing Colorado. I couldn't disagree more with you, Joan. I mean, it's just a function of what you have going on in your life and the things that you can sacrifice here, there, and everywhere. I don't think that's true. If you tell me that me not showing up to the caucus, which I do every time, and then to a county assembly, which I do every time, and then the state assembly I do every time I get voted to it, that's not enough and that I need to show up to all these other meetings, you're going to lose out on all but just about 3,700 people. And, you know, and Billy told me off air, the primary numbers from the last election for Republicans, these are just Republican voters. There were over 400,000 registered Republicans that voted in the primary. You're telling me we're content with having less than 1% of them vote simply because they have a lifestyle or a schedule that permits them to show up to these special events? I'm not satisfied with that, not in 2023, not when there's other alternatives. So, I mean, for me, if you want to opt out of the primary that we have, the open primary, and I'm all about having Republicans vote for Republicans, you better come up with an alternative that allows those 400,000 otherwise interested primary voters to participate, or you have lost me. I will take the current system over 3,700 dictating the statewide stuff all day because it's just not representative. It's just not reflective. You know, this article, by the way, put up here that Hank Schwanger is out there at Fremont County promoting the withdrawal. Why does anybody listen to that clown?
Oh, wait, did you say Ron Hanks is out there promoting this?
Yeah, he's out there promoting the withdrawal from the why do we listen to a guy who campaigned against our nominees?
Yeah, let's jump in the Wayback Machine and realize what he did in the last election cycle. What exactly did he do? What was his position? After promising to support the nominee because he wasn't the nominee, he turned around and supported the other person. Well, not necessarily the other person.
He supported some libertarian
He
goof.
backed it off and he went to the third party because he was mad that he didn't get the vote. So that's the support. That's the person that you're going to listen to about the primary. Now, George, I get some numbers for you. Now, it is over 400,000 voters, Republican registered voters, did participate in the 2022 primary.
That's a lot.
There were about an additional 200,000 plus unaffiliateds that did vote in the Republican primary, about 50%. And thus, the Republican Party in Colorado has decided that the fix is in. Let's rewind to 2020. At that point, there were almost 600,000 and change of voters, of Democrat-registered voters in their primary, and an additional 300,000 unaffiliateds voted in their primary. Did the Democrats go, the fix is in? That this must be how things are still? Their conclusion was different. And again, drastically fewer numbers voted in the Republican primary in 2020 than they did in 2022.
Billy, do you have you gave us the Republican numbers from 2020 numbers, like how many unaffiliated jumped in on their primary versus primary voters?
In the 2022, you got 230,000-ish unaffiliateds in the Republican primary, 161,000 unaffiliateds in the Dem primary. However,
out of a total vote of what did it say? How many Dems voted?
I have to do both.
But you know what?
380, more or less. Yeah. So
you know what's crazy about that is those are still pretty big numbers. They had nothing on the damn ballot.
Yeah.
And I remember everybody was running as an incumbent, so there was no real reason to participate, and they still pulled 100,000+ unaffiliated voters. We had all the action on our side. Dang, man, that says something.
And I still would want to know that how come then it wasn't stolen from the Democrats in 2020. If that's the issue, that people are crossing lines. If all of these Republicans, in theory, went over and crossed lines and wanted to foul up the Democrat primary, how the heck did they do so well in the state in 2020? Because that wouldn't be the case. It seems more to be an anomaly on that area. And my premise would be that these are unaffiliateds, which again is about 45% of the voting total of a percentage in the state of Colorado, that those unaffiliateds came in to vote in your primary and tried to guide closer to possibly candidates that would win in the general. But the assumption that is made by the conservatives and the GOP is, obviously they tried to steal it from us. I don't see that. And if they were trying to steal it from us, Why does
just
people
also-
like Ron Hanks not be the nominee? Why does he get the
just
super conservative people?
no evidence to show that Dems en masse are switching to vote unaffiliated. Like, we'd be able to see that. We could see numbers of people that unaffiliated and then reaffiliated after the primary.
You'd see a swing.
Yeah, there just aren't any numbers to support that.
None at
It's
all.
just, I don't get where that's coming from. Couple texts. Our conversation with Dave engendered this one. This convo with Dave has changed my mind because they, the COGOP, are aware of what's happening to the kids. That's worth $50 a month. Well, great. And then he says the opt-out tactic is pretty shady. I agree with that too. In fact, Billy, can you think of another place in civic life where if you don't show up or vote, you are treated as voting in favor of something or supporting something?
I can't, because we normally do it based on the affirmative. You need to take the affirmative action. You need to do something, or as you outlined, otherwise it's the status quo. Because if you don't do something, the status quo is what stays. And so you need to make the affirmative argument, take the affirmative action, take the affirmative choice in order to change the status quo. That's how this works.
You know, we even do that now with cookies on websites, right? Like even at the bottom of that, they say, do you want to reject them or accept them all? Or do you want to... We don't just presume anymore that because you go to a website, you're signed up for all of their, in your case, Billy Pornhub cookies, which I don't know if that's true or not. But
on a side
Snake
note,
Hub.
On a side note, okay, this is totally on a total tangent. Recently on the Google machine that's on my phone, I went through and there was something, and again, okay, it went into my Purian interests. It was,
of course,
so-and-so celebrates July 4th in this bikini, and I forgot who it was.
Oh, yeah, it was Paige Saranic from the golf world.
You knew.
Buddy, because I had it on the page here when I was looking. What was I on? I was on offthepress.com.
Yes.
And it was an actual story.
Yeah.
And it was clickbait, and I'm a victim.
I know, I was a victim. And so now on my cell phone, on the suggestions from Google, it's at least every third one is someone in a bikini.
Oh, no.
Most of the time female. But still, I keep looking at it
Most
going,
of the time
I look awful.
female? Oh, my God, Billy.
It is so embarrassing now. It's horrible. So, yeah.
That is an aside, but so forgive me, whoever's on this machine
so
after
sorry.
me, Deb. Deb Flora gets stuck with those. It's because I fell victim to their damn clickbait thing. But nonetheless, I consented by clicking on it. They didn't presume I wanted to see it.
You made the affirmative choice.
I made an affirmative choice.
Yeah, see?
It's the same thing with like
we made the circle there.
You can't walk around in public and grab someone's keister and be like, unless they say no, they must be consenting.
Yes, exactly.
Do you know what I mean? You'd say, nope, no. That's not how it goes.
Yeah, it's not. It's like when you go into the hotel, and I'm not very good at Spanish, but all I know is those little things that say "do not disturb" on them.
Yeah.
On the Spanish side, it says "no lo moleste." I did not know that was an option, so I always hang that on the outside of the door, just in case we were wondering. "No lo moleste." None of the molesting for me. I somehow I think it means sleep, but I'm not sure.
This is something our buddy Joan has said here, which is Republicans are not voting because there's nothing to vote for. First off, where's the proof that Republicans aren't voting?
Well, here's the thing.
I don't see that.
If we go to the primary in 2022, we have 380,000 Democrats voting in the primary, 423,000-ish of Republicans.
Because we did have a choice to make.
Yeah, but you had significantly more Republicans showing up. So I disagree with the premise that Republicans aren't showing up. If we look at the primary numbers, more Republicans showed up to vote in the primary than Democrats showed up to vote in their primary. I disagree.
I do appreciate this notion that we're trending towards a uniparty on some of these. I appreciate that folks think that. I get that. But at the same time, if you just look at Colorado under the leadership of a Democrat governor, AG, and legislature, you can't help but conclude that things would be different if the Republicans had control of pick one of those offices or pick one of those branches. It would be different. And if that's true, then it does mean that there is something to vote for here.
Most of the time, most voters like a split party system. If you go and you talk to them, doesn't matter what party has all the control. They prefer a split party system because of the guardrails that are inherent in that type of a situation.
Somebody texted in, check out uniteamerica.org. It purports to be a nonpartisan PAC, but their voting views are very lefty. I believe that they've started to tap into Colorado. Here's what I think is coming for us, and we'll cut away for a break here in just a second, but here's what I think is coming for us. And we got to get this Billy, we got to find a local person who goes, this no labels thing. We were on this issue early, like months ago, and now it is starting to pop up in other places, whether it's on like Meet the Press or the Wall Street Journal podcast. And I listen to that every day. I like that one. It's starting to become a bigger issue. And the question is, if it shows up, and it's on a bunch of states now for it's got like placeholders on a bunch of states' ballots for things down the road. I just wonder if it isn't going to be a spoiler, and if so, for whom? But is the door open for a third party that is a non-party sort of thing? If they just were to take a populist approach, could they win? Spoiler alert, no. I don't think they could. Is there an individual race out there that is less than statewide where they might pull off a victory? Maybe. I think it's more likely they'll derail one of the parties that might otherwise win. Just look at the 8th CD and look at what the Libertarian candidate do there. That was just so selfish and short-sighted. But I think that could happen. But I want to get one of those no labels folks on here to talk about what they think they're going to accomplish and how they're going to do it. Because I don't think you can get elected to anything major if you're not a Republican or a Democrat. And remember, you can't point to Sinema, because she ran as a Dem and then unaffiliated after she was elected. So that's totally different. Bernie Sanders, guy continues to run as a Dem when he wants the big stuff and then just unaffiliates after he loses or whatnot. I don't know that counts either. Maybe, is there someone else in Delaware or something like that who's straight up unaffiliated? Joe Lieberman. That was legit. Joe Lieberman was. I just don't know if you could pull that off anywhere, including Colorado. I just don't think it's a winner. Listen, we're going to end up getting some more texts in here that I'll read during the break. I want to cut away, but I can't really do that until I tell you about my teeth. I know that sounds like a very personal and awkward thing, but my teeth are doing pretty well, in large part because, one, I brush twice a day, whether I need it or not, at least. I use those little picky things I'm not a flosser in that way. I use those little pick things that have the built-in little flossy connector thing in there while I'm driving. It's just such an easy way to do it. And I go to Twin Aspen Dental twice a year for just the routine stuff. And if they ever told me I needed to come in for something more, I would. But Doctors Richter and Snyder, they're the real deal. And I'm telling you, if you're just okay with your current dentist, like it's fine, I'm getting what I need, why not upgrade? Why not go see our friends at Twin Aspen Dental right there by Stroh Road, and Parker Road, and give them a shot. You got nothing to lose. You can always go back to the other, I'm okay with it. You can always go back to them later. But why don't you try a cleaning with Doctors Richter and Snyder? Just a checkup and see if you don't like it better. I did, and I fell in love with these folks. I'm going to go there again. I think it's coming up in another 2 or 3 months. But I look forward to it, man. It's just such a positive environment. There's really no stress there at all. All the folks there like being there. At least that's what they're oozing out to you while you're being treated by them. It's just a great experience. I don't feel any stress about it. I feel like it's a good thing. And yeah, they do all the other stuff, the root canal stuff, permanent tooth stuff, and all that other stuff. Those things that you want filled in by the implants or the bridges, or any of the other dental heavy lifting, yeah, you can get that there. But honestly, the routine stuff, you need good care for that too. And Richter and Snyder will do that for you. Actually, I want to get back to see Dr. Snyder too, because I know she just had baby number 1 of what I believe to be 10. I made that up. I don't know if she's listening, but 10 kids. I think we need 10 good taxpayers and conservatives. I hope they can produce them. Give them a call at 303-841-7466, 303-841-7466. You can check them out at twinaspendentalcenter.com. That's twinaspendentalcenter.com. Cutting away for a break. When we come back, we'll get to your texts, your calls. It's George Brauchler on the George Show, 710 KNUS.
Imagine the lifelong impact of a journey to the Holy Land, surrounded by like-minded travelers. Picture yourself stepping foot in iconic locations right out of history. With nationally syndicated radio hosts Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher, you'll gain firsthand understanding of the spiritual and political importance of this vital region.
Hi, it's Mike Gallagher here. I hope you'll join Dennis Prager and me on an amazing journey through Israel in October 2023.
Discover Israel's vibrant culture and why this nation is such a strategic partner for the United States. Join Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher on this life-enriching Israel tour, October 25th through November 3rd, 2023. For more information, call 855-565-5519 or visit standwithisraeltour.com.
Big Head Todd and the Monsters right here to wrap up this final segment of the George Show on 710 KNUS. We'll be back tomorrow. We've got some irons in the fire already just based off of some of the conversations that we've had here, some texts that we've received. The opt-out heard we were going to because we're going to be a caucus state like Iowa. Do you know? I don't know if we're going to be a caucus state like Iowa. I just don't think that's a step in the right direction for Colorado. It just doesn't make sense to me when we have, and again, you can disagree with it, but it is a reality that is not going to be undone. We are a mail-in ballot state, and every state, in my opinion, is going to move to that. It's just too convenient. Now, do we need 3 weeks to vote? No, we don't need 3 weeks to vote unless you're like serving a sentence or something, or you're out of the but we can come up with things for that. You don't need 3 weeks to vote. That's just too long of a period of time. But the idea that we're going to go back to in-person voting, never. Here's another one. Have Billy compare the primary Republican turnout to the number that voted in the general. Yeah, we could have Billy take a look at that. He's smart at that stuff. You talk about the 8th and the Libertarian Party, but Williams has made a deal with the devil with the Libertarians. They're his hammer to keep moderate candidates out. Maybe. But if that becomes the lesson here is that, hey, the party's going to show up and say, well, we've got to deal with the Libertarians unless you renominate Barb Kirkmeyer, I think that's a huge mistake. I don't know if Barb's even running. I just made that name up, but I think that's a huge mistake. I think you risk us losing that seat again if you don't run someone who can do as well, at least as well, as Barb did. You just need the Libertarians to decide they're not going to cut off their nose to spite their face. I get it. They're voting out of principle. I don't care. Would you rather be with Congresswoman Caraveo and having voted your principal, or would you rather have a Congresswoman Barb Kirkmeyer? I know the direction I'd like to go. Here's another one. RFK Jr. could actually pull off the third party in 2024. Absolutely not. No chance in hell. It says true Dems are frustrated with Biden. Republicans are frustrated with Trump. Just let me be clear about this. There's simply no chance that a third-party candidate is going to win in this election cycle the way it's shaping up right now. RFK Jr. cannot win as a third-party candidate. His only hope is to be the Democrat alternative for when Biden pops smoke and leaves, and even then I'm not sure he could get it. He cannot win as a third-party candidate. That's what I'm saying. And then a very nice text here to finish up. Good show, George. Very informative. I don't know about that, but if it is, it's because of you guys. Because you guys with the calls and the texts. Listen, before I let you go, can I just tell you about a superstar out there in the legal world? And I tell you about him every single day because he deserves it, and that's a guy named Dan Kaplish. The J in Daniel J. Kaplish, as I've told you, is for justice. Dan is the kind of guy who who goes out there and fights every single day for you. And I've said this before, but I want to emphasize this. What I appreciate about Dan is he simply doesn't care about your political leanings. He simply doesn't care about all those other issues that we talk about here on the radio ideologically. What he cares about is your case righteous? And what it takes to have a righteous case is, has somebody harmed you? Has somebody hurt you through their negligence, recklessness, or intentional conduct sometimes? That's it. That's the litmus test. And if you're that person, you get to have the MVP of the civil justice world, and that's Dan Kaplis and his partner, Barbara Wahid. You got to call them at 303-770-5551, 303-770-5551, or check them out at dankaplislaw.com. Kaplis is spelled C-A-P-L-I-S, dankaplislaw.com. My thanks to Dave Williams and all of you guys. Tomorrow we'll be back. We'll have a whole host of issues. My guess is a couple of guests as well. Billy, thanks behind the glass. We'll see you guys back here at 6 a.m. It's George Brauchler. You've been listening to the Mighty 710 KNUS.